Salute, folks. Tartaria explained, the Millennial Reign of Jesus, and Satan's Tartaria short season deception. The Millennial Reign of Jesus, Tartaria, and Satan's short little season. The Millennial Kingdom and Reign of Jesus Christ, our man, the way, the truth, and the life, our everything. And his nemesis and protagonist, and his short little season. The Millennial Kingdom or Reign of Jesus Christ, Satan's little or short season, and some Tartaria type stuff. The theory of the Millennial Reign already happening and us being in Satan's little season. I know that sounds crazy, but I've been looking into a lot of stuff for a long time, and this is exciting for some people. It's exciting information. May the Father in heaven be with you. What you're looking at on screen right now are just some little nuggets of treasures I found here in southwestern Ontario. Basically, if you're looking at it US-wise, it's the part of Canada between Buffalo and Detroit. I find the evidence extremely compelling and extremely interesting. Anybody who knows that we're being lied to in general should be extremely excited to sink their teeth into this one, as I was. And I don't think this is a salvation issue by any means. However, with the quote-unquote Tartaria stuff I used to look into, I was seeking answers, and I was praying for answers and discernment in regards to that. And very shortly after, I stumbled onto this. It's been a while since I stumbled onto this, but I want to share this with you. Please have an open mind and always pray for the Holy Spirit and knowledge and wisdom, and for the Most High Almighty Father to provide you with discernment. In Jesus' name. Just a brief YouTube history of myself. My bread and butter when I started here was mostly self-improvement for men, with a little bit of an edge to it. I was a little bit too intense and a little bit too rah-rah masculinity. When I look back at some of it now, it's kind of cringe, but there's some good stuff in there too. I just saw the emasculation of soy-ciety, as I used to call it. And I guess I wanted to go to the other extreme, so at least dudes would meet me in the middle, if that makes sense. But anyhow, I realized that there is no self-improvement with all the stoicism and trying to control my thoughts, tactics I put into place. I realized there is no self-improvement without Jesus and the Almighty Father in heaven. If I could summarize the best self-improvement tactic that I've implemented from all that, it's basically just don't care what others think about you. Care about the people, but don't care what they think about you. It's easier said than done, but it's the best practice to have, especially for us Christians. Articulation disarray, some of the New Age type people really like to do. And yeah, it's just a bunch of gobbledygook. Or there were a lot of negative comments in general. A little tip that I found useful before is when I absolutely do want to type something negative or just get it off my chest, you just type it. There's something therapeutic about typing it, like slapping those keys and just typing it out. But once you're done typing it, it's kind of off your chest. So just don't hit send, just don't hit that enter button, or hit the enter button then delete it immediately after. We don't need more and more negativity. If I don't like a video, I click off. I don't leave a negative comment. I don't hit the dislike button. I've done it, but I try not to. And that's a good way of just getting off your chest and moving on if you absolutely have to type something. Because there's something therapeutic about getting that off your chest and slapping that keyboard, those keys. Definitely some old world stuff in there, and some just chaos and destruction. And if you ask me, it's pretty good photographic evidence of the little season. You'll see. If the little season looked like something, this is what it would look like. And it's real life. And I'm not saying Tartaria never existed. It's on very old maps. However, I think it's being used as a scapegoat or a front or a pro-Asia cover-up for the Millennial Kingdom. Look at this name and here and not there. And there is more evidence being discovered seemingly by the day that the Millennial Kingdom of Jesus Christ did happen for 1,000 years here on earth. Whether Jesus was physically here or not, or whether the saints were physically here or not, we're merely speculating at this point. However, this is certainly exciting and interesting times for myself and obviously many of you. And I'm just a guy who loves Jesus and the Almighty Father in heaven. And I'm not an ist or a preterist. And if you accuse me of being anything like that, all I gotta say to you is... One of the comments that drives me nuts is when they say in their comment, wrap your head around this, or try to wrap your head around this. So for all the ones who left pretentious comments or negative comments...
Hey, you know what? I just figured out what I want for dinner. A nice hot bowl of shredded stew.
The aggravation and irritability that poor Jesus had to go through. All the things he had to go through, but one of them that isn't spoken about enough is his tolerance and patience. Besides all the suffering Jesus went through, that's one of the sufferings that we don't really talk about a lot, because he was actually vocal about it. I can almost see him massaging his temples, like, how much must I suffer thee? Have ye no faith? Like, you could almost see him, like, stressing out and getting frustrated. And not to mention when he showed them what's good in the temple with them tables. Our man Jesus don't play. But yeah, besides having to bear all the sins of this world, he had to have some serious patience too. I can't imagine, considering the way I tend to deal with people of this world.
Gonna join us, right?
Yep, but he says he'd rather take his food out on the lawn.
Don't. What?
Wait for it. Good, it works. You try doing that with your body now.
Let the chaos and destruction begin.
Harry smiled about you with Harry smiled about
The Jesus Clan. With Dan. In my opinion, if you're open to the fact that angels came down here in ancient times and made love to women and had giant offspring, and that the Almighty Father in heaven sent his only begotten Son to be tortured and to die and be resurrected for us, I don't see why anybody would have a problem entertaining this idea. The people who have the main problem accepting what I'm going to present are mostly the people who believe the rapture doctrine, or the people who think that we're anticipating the millennial reign of Jesus. And yes, we talk about end times and stuff like that, and that would position us in the real end times, before the battle of Gog and Magog, before the Almighty God destroys everything by fire and there's the new heaven and the new earth. That is after the millennial reign and after Satan's little season, according to Revelation. And I've been through pretty much every rabbit hole the internet could provide in the last 15 plus years in the quote-unquote truther community. And just for the record, there is no truth or anything unless you're a follower and you love Jesus, because he is the way, the truth, and the life. So apologies in advance if I get a little jumbled delivering some of this information. However, basically, for a long time, I forget how many years now, but I was looking into, and I don't like the name, the Tartaria thing, which basically is, we still have remnants of some sort of ancient or older civilization than history tells us. That, for example, this new world, this North America, a lot of the structures are older than they tell us. And with all of the buildings that have been destroyed in the last 100 years plus, I'd say 140 years, well, actually ever since the Civil War. And you can see pictures of just these, like, we lived every city from Detroit to Nashville, Tennessee, to California, to St. Louis, Missouri, Chicago, Illinois, you name it. These were immaculate, comparable to Paris. Like, we had incredible structures. And the churches, all you have to do is pay attention more to the churches. These castles that were left behind. They are like the smoking guns. They couldn't tear it all down. They haven't torn it all down. However, the whole streets looked like that, like cobblestone and just castles everywhere. So pay attention to the churches. They're the real smoking gun here in North America. For example, for how low history tells us the populations were in these different cities and towns, why would they require this overkill of structure, this overkill of just decadence and beauty, when they said that people were poor and driving horse and buggy? Where were these brick factories and these limestone factories that were able to supply all of North America, all of this raw material? There is something definitely being hidden. For example, they were talking about how during the Civil War they couldn't afford like clothing and muskets for a lot of the soldiers. However, simultaneously they were building these immaculate cathedrals and street blocks at supposedly at the same time. Like, things just don't add up. And not to mention all the contests. It seems like every cool building in North America, a lot of them torn down now and a lot of them still existing, that there was some sort of contest of young architects that would write out their plan, and then boom, yeah, in 1 year you have an immaculate cathedral or castle here in North America. It's just so much stuff that didn't make sense. So I'm just thinking to myself, and how does this tie in with Scripture or the Most High Father in heaven? Where does this tie in? And I was asking him, like, please provide me with some sort of answer for this, if thy will be done. What's going on here? Where does this fit in with you? Then I discovered this millennial reign theory that, and a lot of scripture backs it up, and a lot of like Josevius documented it in 70 AD or so, that there was an Armageddon event, and chariots were seen in the sky, and Christians were persecuted like they never were ever. Like, Caesar Nero was using them as torches throughout the streets, burning them alive, and famine, women eating their babies, and things that we wouldn't even be able to wrap our head around. And then after that would explain how, if we could turn back the clocks 200 years, we would see like this immaculate and almost angelic architecture everywhere. That would explain that there was 1,000 years of Christ's reign, with Satan being locked up and Jesus Christ reigning here on earth with his saints. I'm not saying I believe this for sure, however, there's no doubt it's in the realm of possibility. And just because Satan was gone doesn't mean there wasn't still evil. We still had free will and things of that nature. There were certain tribes and certain peoples that didn't subscribe to Jesus, and they definitely wouldn't have been as prosperous as the people who did follow him. And I think that applies now anyhow, but it would definitely apply then. And hence the deserts, and hence the more poor countries and things like that. And that would explain the Dark Ages, where apparently nothing happened for 1,000 years. There was the Dark Ages. And most of us know that Satan likes to invert everything. So if it was the Dark Ages, they're telling us it's the Dark Ages. Maybe that was the Millennial Reign. Don't tune out yet if you don't like this yet. I have a lot more to present, and for some reason people either absolutely love this theory or absolutely hate this theory. And for certain content creators and preachers, I could see why, because they've been preaching a totally different doctrine for years, and if not decades in some cases, and this goes totally against that. And it hurts when you believe something for years, if not decades, and something potentially contradicts it. So this would explain why really, really old structures, like in Mesopotamia and Greece, and old nations like that, look like they were burnt and melted and withered, because that was the Armageddon event that melted things and just flatlined civilizations, and all we see are the remnants, the old remnants of that. That would have been around 70 AD, according to this timeline, that happened. And then the Millennial Kingdom and all the more old, but yet more current compared to that architecture from the old world we still see here, that sometimes did get pummeled a little bit. And some people theorize that there was a mud flood, and from the looks of it, it probably happened about 200 miles in along the coastlines, because it doesn't appear to have happened everywhere, where parts of the city were basically buried in mud. And some people theorize that was actually when Satan was loosed for his little season 250 years ago or whatever, give or take, that he's not even close to as powerful as the Most High in heaven. But he's a pretty powerful non-capital G, and he kicked up a bit of a fuss. He's obviously an egomaniac, so he wants to, hey people, I'm here, and so he probably made a little mud flood, a little mess when he came out, and then proceeded with his lies and his deceptions and covering up what these beautiful civilizations really were. Because if you look at old photos from the 1800s of all these, some cities are totally empty. You have totally empty cities with these incredible structures that we couldn't even replicate today. Or the people just kind of look like tourists. They're well dressed, mind you, but they look like tourists, and they look lost. Like, what is going on here? Look at this beautiful place. And those buildings, they don't look new. Like, according to the timeline, those buildings should be new. But they do, in those old photos, already look extremely weathered. And it doesn't make sense to have these absolutely beautiful structures, and then they slap on, in the 1800s and early 1900s, these tacky looking signs like, oh, Sam's Shoes and Billy Joe's Grocery. Like, something doesn't look right there, and it's that tacky sign on that beautiful building. Not to mention, too, that almost every city in the US and here in Canada, here in Windsor, had some sort of great fire in the late 1800s or early 1900s. And these must have been some great fire to burn down literally brick buildings. And some of the stories behind it, what started these great fires, like cigarettes, and it's amazing we buy it. What was it, a cattle fart that caused the Chicago fires? Isn't there a song about that or something? And in my opinion, that would have been boom. That would have been their excuse for that specific city to tear down as much of the beautiful old world architecture as possible. And Europe had their turn too. They didn't quite do as much damage as they appear to have done here in North America just through things like the Great Fires and the Civil Wars. However, World War II, just take Dresden for example. Dresden was, like, you talk about what a millennial kingdom city would look like on Earth. Dresden, Germany was just mind-blowing before the World Wars. And between World War I and II, they did a substantial amount of damage to Europe. But Europe definitely holds on to more of the old world potential millennial reign architecture that I'm talking about now. And anybody who lives in the UK, like, just go look at your local cathedrals, go for a walk and look at the old world stuff, and just look at a new church versus an old church, and man, it's one of these things are not like the other. There could be a lot of words hidden in plain sight too, like Freemasonry, like the devil's crew of worshippers showing up to these old world cities and look at all of this free masonry and founded. You don't see constructed or built, or as often as you see founded. We founded this. This was founded. They found it. And don't get me wrong, Jesus is still on the throne. Jesus is still the one with all power, even in the little season. However, this is prophesied to happen. This is the little season. And it makes a lot of sense if we're look at the inversion of everything, all the illuminated celebrities, the 33s and the 666s everywhere, and the devil symbology. It really makes sense that we would be in the short season if it isn't the other end times before our Armageddon, which may or may not have already happened, as I alluded to earlier. Who knows? We could be the generation that are really put to the test, because this might be the time in history that is the most difficult to be faithful. The devil seems, if this is his season, he seems to have taken steps to this point, obviously. Because, like, for example, the 40s and 50s and were pretty prosperous. Everybody in North America had a good job, and it was the quote-unquote American dream, the white picket fence and all that, and a lot of people were still faithful. It seems obviously the lack of faith is what really breaks down the spiritual barrier and hedges, and that allows Satan to move forward more and more in his little season. Rolling right into Pride. Pride month. The Pride before the fall. If you think about it, I'll give credit where credit's due. He's done quite a good job in his little season. He's done quite a little job. Everybody is deceived and have bought most things hook, line, and sinker. And he's having his way right now. I don't know how that works, because even though he probably knows he's going to fail no matter what, he seems to be on his diabolical purpose, that's for sure. And if you think of other religious sects and things of that nature that aren't with Jesus, those would have been the people not in the kingdom, not in the prosperous areas of the millennial kingdom. They were still, I'm sure there were still Mongolians, there were Muslims at a certain point, and there were still all sorts of other religions, I'm not going to name them by name, at a certain point that aren't exactly pro-Jesus, if you know what I mean. And speaking of which, going back, I think it was Matthew 24, where Jesus was calling out the Pharisees, and he said the temple would be destroyed in this generation. Like, Jesus did speak a lot of parables, but he was also addressing people in the present. I don't have all the verses in front of me, but I'll have to get into it in depth in a future video. But he mentions several times that It's going to happen in your lifetime. It's going to happen in your generation. Hence 70 AD. Like, you can try to interpret all kinds of things in the Bible, but when Jesus is talking straightforward like that, to me, that's pretty straightforward. Since I've discovered this and reading the Old Testament again a few times, the New Testament again a few times, it makes more sense than ever. There were many times that Jesus was speaking specifically in the present, not to a group of people 2,000 years in the future. What makes us so special? You know what I mean. I merely ask that you consider this topic and look into it further, because it's actually strengthened my faith, and I don't come here with malice presenting this or conflict. I find it something very interesting to look into, and the more people look into it, the more we can unveil in regards to the truth of this all. Like I said, think of what Satan would do in his little season, and it's pretty much lockstep what's happened in the past 200 years up to this point, and who knows what's coming ahead, and who knows how long it will last. A lot of people think we are approaching the end of it, which would make sense that we are in the end times, the end times. And there's a lot of interesting prophecies in the Old Testament that relate to this, in Daniel, which I might get into in a future video. And obviously Revelation. And the way Revelation is presented is, get this out there. This is at hand. This is now. When Revelation was written. When I was a truther, or I still obviously am a truther, but when I was into the sea theories, but not quite yet, back to Christian values, and back to the way, the truth, and the life with Jesus, or at least starting to attempt to follow that, I thought, like, what do things, like, really matter? I detached from material possessions, as I've mentioned before in other content, and little by little got out of a materialistic point of view, but also other vital areas of my life kind of fell apart in that regard too. I was cleaning less, I wasn't mowing my lawn as often as I should, general upkeep of my property, I didn't care if it looked a little trashy. I did kind of, it's almost what some kind of like New Age hippies do too. I was never a New Age hippie, and I never liked New Age hipsters, even when I was a bit of a New Age hipster. I've always had a bit of an edgy, macho attitude, which can be a good thing and a bad thing at times. But yeah, I never resonated with the energy of the New Age hipsters. But I was adopting a mentality of, like, who cares about shaving and showering enough, and I already gave you the examples of that, and that's wrong. The Most High Almighty God gave us what we have in our life. Whether we've had to work for it or not, He gave us the job to work for it. And I still stand true to the fact that if you're truly sincere about thanking Him, He will reward you for that too. And not necessarily with material possessions, but maybe opportunities, or He's a very, very, very fair God. It's amazing. And praise be to you, my Almighty Father in heaven, for that. There's the Statue of Liberty, which is, a lot of people know that's the devil. And lo and behold, the Statue of Liberty has a broken chain on her ankle. That's the pronouns it goes by. Statue of Liberty goes by her. Talk about little season jargon. But yeah, at any rate, there's a broken chain, hence Satan being loosed for a little season. And where else would he want his statue other than the Mecca of finance in the biggest city in North America? And this isn't brand new. Like, there's a name for people who sort of believe this. I forget what the difference is, but they're called preterists. And I would never consider myself a preterist. And there's a few things in there that I disagree with. I forget specifically what, but I would never give myself a label like that. I'm a preterist. We're Jesus people. That's what we are. We are Jesus people, and we love the Most High Almighty Father in Jesus. And if I'm wrong about this, I'll find out eventually. I'll keep praying on it, and I encourage you to do the same. However, this has been one of the most compelling things I've run across probably in my entire life. This was one of those mind blowers beyond mind blowers in regards to just wow. You look at the world through whole new eyes, and it has strengthened my faith. It hasn't done absolutely nothing negative in regards to my faith in the Most High in Jesus. And naturally, people will ask the question, well then, who was the Antichrist? And that would pin Caesar Nero as the Antichrist. Numerology, I think all kinds of different numbers add up in regards to his name, to him being so. And the persecution he did to Christians, like I mentioned before, the torches and the fed to lions and beheadings and horrors beyond anything we can think of a pleasant way to go. It was definitely not. And to be honest, the Antichrist isn't mentioned as much in the Bible as people think. Like, there's so much talk about it on certain channels and social media that you would think it would just be plastered all over. But no, if you were to just read it with fresh eyes, you would think that the Antichrist is more of a spirit, like the spirit of an Antichrist, like that can inhabit people in general. But if you could pin one person as being the Antichrist for that time, it would definitely be Caesar Nero. And there were false prophets and false magicians in that time too. That would have been an insane time to be alive after Jesus' death to 70 AD. And another thing I neglected to mention, I told you this would be jumbled, but the camp of the saints, like where would the camp of the saints be now? In heaven? Or if Jesus is still here, where are they? Some people speculate the North Pole, because in the battle of Gog and Magog, they'll be assembled, they'll surround the camp of the saints, so that a lot of people speculate that's the North Pole. And if you keep going to the center, it's a lot more climate than they tell you. And who knows, Jesus could emit his own heat and light. Like, he has all power. He with the hidden technology they could have had back in his kingdom, with all those spires that supposedly harvested free energy, that free energy could have came from Jesus himself. Who knows? He is that powerful. Oh, and how could I forget the good old mark of the beast? Pardon me, there's nothing good about it. However, yes, I was guilty of thinking at one point in time here recently that the jibba jabbo in the old arm was it. And if we're in the little season, that's obviously not the case. And to me, it's the mark of the beast could be just a spiritual mark in your right hand and your forehead. Like, it might not be physical, it could be spiritual, because our Heavenly Father gave Cain a mark when he banned him from the Garden of Eden. And some people speculate it was a skin color change or a change in his nose. You can read between the lines on that one. However, it could have been a spiritual mark too. We don't know for sure, and the mark of the beast could just be a spiritual mark. However, it is reported, and I don't have the information in front of me, maybe I'll dig into that for a future video, but there was some sort of certificate and marks for Christians and non-Christians in that time when Caesar Nero was in charge of the Roman Empire. And as frustrated as some people might be that they won't be able to live and reign with Jesus for 1,000 years, we don't quite know how that works, whether it's only the saints that have the glorified bodies that can sustain for 1,000 years, or are we just in our human form, just live quite a bit longer and way healthier during the millennial reign here on earth. Because the way it's described, it's 1,000 years here on earth. And I know there's different meanings for 1,000 years too in the Bible, but in my opinion, he's talking literally 1,000 years in this case on earth. And yeah, it's too bad we missed that. We weren't a part of that, but we're looking forward to the best part. We're looking forward to the new heaven and the new earth, the eternal kingdom forever, if this is the case. Which a lot of Christians think that's how it works anyways. Most Christians just think you die or go to heaven or hell. It might be a little more complex than that. We don't know for sure. It says there's a great white throne judgment. So I definitely think it's very, very, very possible that the millennial reign of Jesus here on earth for 1,000 years already happened, and we are in Satan's little season. And going back to Satan inverting things, there seems to be a lot of things manufactured right now that would point to making it look like it's the apocalypse that really happened in 70 AD. A lot of things going on in the Middle East, and yes, Satan inverting things. What a better inversion than to say that his children are the actual chosen children of the Most High Almighty God in heaven. I'm sure you can read between the lines on that one too. And no, they're not all bad. I know a few, and they're solid people. But there is definitely a seed line of them who do not have good intentions. And Jesus called them out in the New Testament. He called them out for what they were. So don't be deceived. And yes, that would explain why there's so much deception. We are in the season of deception. When you really look at it, it all seems to make sense now. It's hard to talk to other people about this stuff. That's why, as mentioned earlier, not caring what people think about you is a very valuable asset to people like us. We've all seen it. The people that just get overwhelmed with information and they just get that verbal diarrhea and they just want to spew it all over other people. And we could have been guilty of that, and I was guilty of that at my young age too. I've been in the hidden information game, for lack of a better term, for quite a while. For example, when I discovered biblical cosmology, I didn't know who to tell. I had to tell somebody. So my mom was a Christian. She was the only other Christian I could talk to in my family at that time. And I told her about it, and obviously she thought I was absolutely insane. So after I got it off my chest, I started calling biblical cosmology Fight Club. You just don't talk about Fight Club. You know what? Unless somebody else is in Fight Club, yeah, I just didn't feel the need to talk about it. If they believe in all the spinning and we're going at this 66,000 miles an hour or miles away and we're spinning and going here and there, and Jesus and God exist and the Almighty created it that way, you know what? More power to him the way I see it. I just like knowing that his throne's right above us, literally. In the Millennial Kingdom, they obviously had elaborate fountain systems and beautiful art and architecture. A good kindergarten way to, I've noticed, to try to wake people up to this quote-unquote Tartaria stuff, or old world buildings, for lack of a better term, which might lead them into Jesus and the Millennial Kingdom in the short season, is just, if you're with them, or you see a picture of an old world building, or you see one in person when you're with them, and most anybody with half a brain marvels at some of these structures. There's just something in us that just marvels at them. And just throw out there, like, man, like how did, when this city's population was so low and we didn't have power tools or horse and buggy or anything like this, how did we do this? how did we build this? How did we bring these blocks here? And you'll notice, they'll be like, huh, it'll start to get the wheels turning a little bit. If once again, they have half a brain. Yes, it was a magnificent kingdom beyond what you would see in any retro Disney movie fairy tale. It was a real life, like, beautiful fairy tale. Like, I could even picture my walking around the streets and just having birds like landing on your finger if you want them to. You know what I mean? Like, zippity doo dah, the Millennial Kingdom. And yes, people took incredible pride, discipline, and cleanliness and general upkeep to all their property and possessions and things of that nature. And I am far from perfect in that regard, right, too, but I've been making steady improvements in that regard big time ever since, and it basically was whenever I discovered the Millennial Kingdom thing. It was my answer when I was crying out to the Almighty Father with this Tartaria thing. Like, where does this fit into the picture, Father? And soon after, it seems like he showed me. So as you can see, you're looking at Detroit here. And in my opinion, this is the best, some of the best evidence of the Millennial Kingdom and the short season simultaneously. Because it used to be like a kingdom. It used to look like Paris. Like, if we could see it fully restored in the 1880 or something like that, the whole city, the neighborhoods and everything, our minds would be blown. And now, as you can see, it resembles exactly what a short season would be. There's some very beautiful and some very ugly in these pics for sure. Other good examples of this would be like St. Louis. St. Louis has just incredible architecture in some spots, and if you look at the neighborhoods there and just how they're set up, you're like, that's like what a peaceful kingdom on earth would look like. And Pennsylvania too, some parts of Pennsylvania with the brick roads and the old houses on the hills and some of the architecture there. Pennsylvania is just amazing. Obviously Philadelphia and definitely Pittsburgh. You look at the depictions of Jesus' times, and it's like a dusty desert, and they're really primitive looking buildings they depict, and yeah, it's very dusty and desolate and dirty, and I do not imagine it really was like that. But I think that's a form of programming to have us not worry so much or take pride in once you become a true believer, that yes, you detach from material possessions, but you don't go to the opposite end of the spectrum. You take care of what you have. You make a really nice garden and upkeep your property and cut your grass. What they haven't torn down of the old world yet, which I think in North America, it's probably at least 70%. It's a hypothesis, but I could almost be too generous in that regard. But from what they haven't torn down, there's a lot of hidden old world stuff that in plain sight that we can't even see because what they've done to it. There's some really beautiful old houses that aren't very beautiful anymore because they've been covered up with cheap siding and they've been made to look more like a modern house, whereas the skeleton, the inside, there's a treasure inside of there. And a lot of the buildings have been covered up with cheap siding or plaster or whatever it is they use, because I was watching a documentary on Rochester, New York, and he was showing the pictures of the old buildings, the old world buildings, and they were immaculate, and there were still some of them were still there, and you couldn't tell because they were just cheapened up. They were covered up with all this commie crap, for lack of a better term. There's so much that is coming up as regard to evidence when it comes to Millennial Reign and the short season, the poorer the arguments against it becomes. Obviously, take care of your town or city. I'm obviously not a tree-hugging hippie, but even if your city is a big pile of trash like mine, my city, similar to the D across the river from me, is a trash city. It's horrid. And even if it's obviously beyond repair, like a city like mine, you obviously don't want to contribute to the problem. It's extremely disheartening and frustrating. And that's a problem I have with certain country people that come to our countries, is they don't care. They're one of the number one contributors to the trash problem. Because they don't consider this their homeland. They have no pride or care in this new place they're dwelling in. And there's certain types of people from mostly the desolate regions I spoke about in my one video. Yes, they just don't care. I'll give you an example of the ones that have come to this country the most. And all you have to do is look at the main river in the country that they care about, their land. And I tell you, if I had an option between submersing myself in that river or having to crawl and rummage through what the guy had to do in Shawshank Redemption to escape, I'd probably pick the option 2. That's how septic and horrid that river has become. And that's in their homeland. And trust me, the small percentage of ones that don't contribute to the problem, that are good people, there's definitely some. They'll say the exact same thing, that the majority ruins it for good ones like them. Because I'll say this, it isn't people that come from Christian nations that destroy things. And there's small Christian communities in the northern part of that specific country, so salute to them. That obviously doesn't scratch the surface of the damage that the floods of people can do to a nation. However, it's a little pet peeve of mine, and it'll happen like that more and more over time. The problem is this topic and this space will be infiltrated big time. You're going to see big names like Max Egan and David Icke and speaking against it and coming up with their own quote-unquote proofs that it has nothing to do with Jesus and it was the Tartarians. And there's going to be new characters and faces popping up, just like in 2020 through 2022. You got all these new characters popping up with their podcasts to pretend that they're the good guys and serving truth, but they will be against the true movement, which is pro-Jesus and Father in Heaven people. Here where I live in a home built in 1908, and I definitely wouldn't consider it an MK building, but it's very well, it's red brick, it's very, very well constructed. So, I also think they went to this very modern, communist, ugly architecture that we have now in baby steps. We went from the original old world homes and buildings that set a precedent that the short season folks couldn't keep up, obviously, and wouldn't want to, because they were so beautiful. They made you want to live and love this world, but not like the material of it. It's just something good on the eyes. It's something good for the spirit. You marvel in it. It's not material, because we all need homes. You know what I'm getting at. You know what I mean. I'm at a loss for words on that one. But anyways, they seem to have gone in baby steps, because this is a very well-built, beautiful home that I live in. So they seem to have... They obviously had factories that could produce these bricks, or they had a lot of bricks left over, and they went from baby steps. They started still building pretty nice, and then as time went on, degraded the quality. For example, too, like this house is built in 1908, and the bricks look brand new. There ain't a chip in them. They don't look worn at all. And then there's other buildings that they claim were built in the same time period, and the bricks look way more worn. They were built to last, so it's still standing, but it looks way more beat up and worn down and weathered than these homes around here, for example, built in the early 1900s. And it looks like they left more of Europe alone just to accommodate the lie, I suppose, that Europe was the old world and we came here, and Christopher Columbus and all that fun stuff. And who knows what parts of it are true and what parts of it aren't, and what the real timeline is. All in all, though, this is an extremely invigorating topic. We all knew, I think this is from The Matrix. I haven't even watched the whole Matrix first movie. We've obviously throughout the years, though, just seen the random clips of it in the type of content we've watched, but there's something wrong in the world and we couldn't quite put our finger on it. And now it's seems like we can actually kind of put our finger on it. And the ones who won't at least consider it are the ones who have trouble breaking the programming. Because there's a lot of like new age people and stuff like that who consider themselves truthers, but they just fell into the other trap. Satan has honey traps everywhere. He just doesn't want you following Jesus and the Most High Father in heaven. Because man, there are some pretentious people out there. I used to work in the health food industry, and that's one thing I hated about that, is people who eat healthy think that they're so special. And man, this truther movement has so many pretentious people that think they have it all figured out. It's unbelievable. And same with some Christians. They think they have to like decode the Bible and this and that. Like, Jesus was pretty straightforward. He laid out his meat and potatoes for us, because Jesus didn't just come for us, and the Bible wasn't just written for us. I'm speaking like mildly to high intelligent people. It was written, and he came here for dumb people too. Like, dumb people aren't gonna decode the Bible, and Jesus and the Father don't expect them to. It's very simple. All this is very simple. Make an effort to implement more and more good things for the temple he's provided for us, because we can, not for vanity, but for our own health and mental clarity. Mental clarity is related to the health of your body, obviously. If you're full of yeast bacteria, which is candida, which is a parasite, you're all full of gunk and sugar-consuming bacteria, you're not going to think right, and you're going to have a rotten brain and rotten thoughts. So take care of your body, take care of that temple, and take care of all your stuff. It shouldn't let us divide us as Christians. I have no problem with even people who believe in the rapture or anything like that, as long as it doesn't affect their drive and motivation not to sin and to follow Jesus and the Most High Father as much as possible. That's what the main meat and potatoes here is. And to believe that Jesus died for our sins, and the Father sent him for us to do so. And we're so thankful to Jesus and the Father for that. I just read a study. They actually did a scientific study that gratitude makes you live longer. So what a better way than to thank the Creator and use our gratitude on him. Back to some notes on the Millennial Reign. There's a lot of pictures of, I guess they'll classify it in the medieval period, or maybe Renaissance, but Renaissance or medieval pictures of Jesus and the saints. And yeah, Jesus is living amongst us. I'll have to make a slideshow video of that in the future, of just the medieval, it's really hard to find, but the medieval Renaissance pictures of Jesus living amongst us. They're amazing pictures. And he's very fair-skinned. He's got strawberry blonde sometimes. The art that depicts Jesus in like medieval garb or Renaissance clothing. I thought there was way more because I searched for it before, and it looks like there's been some foul play. I hope you enjoy these pictures, not in any specific chronological order, and if there's dates attached, you can't really trust that because the dates are all messed up as we've discussed before. And the saints too, walking among us, wearing the garb of the time. And Jesus looking like a king, a relatively modest, dressed-wise king, but ruling as king nonetheless. Every knee shall bow, and that's no joke, no matter what time you're in. But yes, the medieval pictures of Jesus are amazing and extremely interesting. And I'm not talking about Caesar Borgia, if you know what that is. I'm not talking about that dude with the beret.
Oh, no, 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 no.
Some people ask, like, why would this be hidden? Why doesn't anybody know about it? In just a short amount of time, 100 years, we can block a lot of stuff out. I've heard several accounts of centenarians. Is that what you call them? Centenarians? People who live over 100 that recall being taught about biblical cosmology in school. And one apparently even remembered them coming in and removing everything and bringing a globe in. She was there during the transition, apparently. And books don't last. Books decompose pretty quickly. And if we are in the little season, wouldn't Satan do absolutely everything in his power to eliminate 100% proof that Jesus did reign here as king, as he said? I think there would be a lot more Christians here if people knew that for sure. And some people will wonder about the pagan symbology, the gargoyles, and some of the signs and symbols. They could have had a completely different meaning from what we've been told, or they could have been added on after. if they founded it and it was Freemasonry, they might as well put some stuff on it to make it theirs. And based on the evidence and all the pictures I've seen from all the different cities in North America of what buildings have been destroyed and what they looked like when they were there, old world wise, it's basically all the crappy architecture left behind. And we marvel at this stuff, like, this is amazing. And this was the stuff that Satan was like, alright, we'll keep this. So imagine what it looked like in its prime. It's mind-boggling. It almost brings a tear to my eye. And some of this old world evidence of Jesus and the saints you find in Catholic Church and things related to Catholicism. And back in the Millennial Kingdom, it probably wasn't even called Catholicism. And I'm sure most structures were places of worship. We worshipped everywhere we went. And then once things got rebranded, we have the abominations in different religious sects that we have now. And with the account of the Jewish historian Josephus, it is talked about sometimes nowadays. It was on Ancient Aliens, if you can believe that. But then they put the Little Caesar spin on it that, Josephus claims that he saw chariots in the sky, but there was obviously ancient aliens. And then you have that dude with the crazy hair talking a bunch of malarkey. There's some people, and I totally understand where they're coming from. If anything, I'm veering more towards your camp in regard to body modifications and tattoos and things of that nature, even dyeing your hair or definitely like intensive plastic surgery or cosmetic procedures. I'm in your camp that no, don't do that. And I totally understand if you're skeptical of people who have that stuff. Tattoos, definitely you don't want to get any more. Once you love Jesus and the Almighty Father more than anybody else, you definitely don't want to get any more body art. That's frowned upon, and I will stand with that. Once you already have it, if you have stuff residual from before, it's obviously not necessary to have it removed. If I had it on my face or something, yeah, I'd have it removed. And we all know that the churches and the cathedrals are amazing evidence left behind. But some of the universities too, unbelievable. And once you start watching movies again, I don't watch a lot of movies, but here and there, when you do, you'll pick up, look at that, like, look at this. They put it in the movies, the old world architecture. I was watching Tommy Boy, good old Chris Farley, and he was at a university, and I was like, look at that university. The old world architecture. And I was mentioning Pennsylvania earlier, but Buffalo, New York, my goodness, they had, I don't know where it is or what, but it's just this row of mansion, like, when mind-boggling. It's all fenced in now and it looks abandoned, but it's just a row of mansion. I can't describe it. It was one of the most unbelievable things I ever seen. John Levy is obviously the most probably the first like popular OG in the Tartaria space. People like his Garfield chill voice. And there was a channel called Exploring Tartaria, and she had all the Middle Ages pictures of Jesus that I mentioned earlier. Her channel was phenomenal. It's gone now, unfortunately. But she was one of the first in the spaces to really put it all together. And there's the stuff that most of us know about is the INJs on the currency, Jesus or Jesus. And even in that time, you probably would require some sort of trading currency, but it was made of real metal of the earth. It was a real currency. And there was no usury. That's where the sin comes in, is the usury. Whether it's the 501c controlling the churches, or the banking from the powerful guys with the small hats. And now to our current times, the conditions of the cities is what a short season would look like. Definitely don't get any additional work. Don't get any additional, like, strange little piercings. I think just straight up earrings for women, maybe. But as far as for men, like piercings and stuff like that, whenever you watch, like, the New Age to Jesus people, you see a lot of them people with their empty, like, loops. I don't know how long it takes or how those heal, but they take the hardware out at least. They take that stuff out. I'm definitely more in a conservative type traditional mentality when it comes to that, is try to keep it au naturel. I might be being a little hypocritical in that regard, because maybe there's a few things I should...
Hypocrisy! A man committed hypocrisy on me.
Every city now has parts of what we're seeing here, what parts of Detroit look like. Detroit is more of a massive scale. It was one of the first with a big massive scale, because it was a big massive city with a lot of neighborhoods. Most of them gone now. Most of these that you're seeing here are gone now. But yeah, every city has a little season block or neighborhood, or a lot more like Detroit in it. Not to mention like Kensington and Philadelphia, where all the zombie drug road, and obviously like the tent cities in California. So it's pretty obvious why they would cover up the Millennial Reign, is because Satan wouldn't have been able to progress, or I guess for us, our perspective, we could say digress our society as much as he did. A lot of people say there would be more evidence, but we actually have a lot of evidence. Very compelling stuff. There is a lot of evidence, and a lot I haven't mentioned yet, and a lot that will be unearthed, literally and figuratively, and discovered. And you talk about breathtaking structures. I mentioned the universities and the cathedrals and obviously the Capitol buildings, but the insane asylums. Oh my goodness. We have a few here in southwestern Ontario, and a lot of them have been torn down by now, and their stories were ridiculous too. A lot of them, they say, were built by the inmates. I didn't know that inmates were master mathematicians that knew. It was unbelievable. But yeah, the asylums are some of the most beautiful castles we have here in North America. They're literally castles. And how many insane people would there have been realistically, if their narrative is true? In a town with 2,000 people, why would you require an insane asylum castle that can hold 3,000 people?
Why? I tell you why. I don't know. It doesn't make sense.
It makes absolutely no sense, even if you include the population of the surrounding areas. In my opinion, it was obviously a beautiful community castle at one time, and they used it to lock up all the religious fanatics, as they would call people like us at that time. And I had a long-time dude of mine on my channel, good old Shin, ask me or bring up the plagues. And yeah, the plagues, some of them could have been part of the apocalypse and Armageddon itself in 70 AD. And who knows, some of them could have been outside the kingdom. They weren't all believers. There were other people, just like the pre-Adamites. There were other people at that time too. And as you've seen in the Old Testament, and he hasn't changed. He's not a different Most High Father. He doesn't take kindly to people who disrespect him. That's why the U.S. is in a world of hurt, and they're going to be in more of a world of hurt more and more. And I'm in Canada, and we're no better. And we're paying the punishment in inflation right now, that's for sure. And a lot of people think that we're the resurrected, and some will counter that and say, well, the Bible doesn't say that reincarnation a thing, but reincarnation in the Eastern religions is like I could be turned into an eagle in the next life, or I could be a rat or a ladybug. Resurrection has happened, and I'm not sure about that one. I'm not saying I was a dude in the Old Testament in a past life, but that's an interesting speculation, and it does talk about that in the Bible. My bad when I do that. I don't have all the scriptures in front of me, because I know that's a tacky thing to do. It says that in the Bible. But this really does open your eyes to a whole new world, just like biblical cosmology did when I first learned about that. When you look at the sky, it's like, wow. And now you look at the buildings around you, and it's like, wow. It really brings out like a new world of Marvel. And like there's here in Windsor where I live, which is the Canadian border city to Detroit, there's a lot of buildings that have no business being here. Hopefully I'll do some walk and talk videos again in the future, and maybe I'll swing by a few. And people speculate, and justifiably so, about how they spread the Gospels to all corners of the earth. And maybe Pangea, the supercontinent, did exist at that time, and it was spread out after Armageddon. Or maybe they had airships, or who knows. But with the fact that Jesus has all power, was given all power to him by the Father in the heavens and the earth, the Gospels could have been spread in a short period of time. If he had his men out on the mission to do so, which he did, if he wanted it done, it got done. Even medications fall into that regard. That's a touchy subject, but I'm sure most of you know what I mean. Like medications, facial piercings, tattoos. If you have the scars from the past on you, there's nothing you can really do about it. But I'm definitely on the side of stay as natural as possible. So yes, moral of the story is one way we can upkeep the traditions of the Millennial Reign, in my opinion, is to beautify where you can. But yeah, in the short season, realistically, if you were to think about how a devil would do it, if he had a short season, realistically, this is how he would do it. He's after souls. In the book Napoleon Hill's Outwitting the Devil, which basically, if you ask me, is a book where he channels the devil. And it was written a long time ago, before they knew anything about the dangers of smoking and certain foods. And the devil laid it all out about the smoking and the foods and the backed up digestive tract. He was very specific. He was coming as a helpful spirit or entity. But I caught him in that book. He called Jesus a great teacher. See what he did there? Yeah, he's a clever devil, that's for sure. And yeah, when it comes to all this alien threat predictive programming in the movies and increasingly in the news now, a lot of people used to think, and still do think, that will be demons, that will be the devil and his team. And some people are speculating now that they could be programming people to see the camp of the saints as an adversary when it comes down. It could be like a ship, right? No matter what, it's best just, if it happens, stay out of it. Don't have any draft. Go in hiding. Don't get any of the jib jabs. Just try to stay out of it and pray. Pray harder than you ever have before. Because people think we live in a land of liberty. And actually we do. Liberty and communism aren't that different. During the whole 2020 to 2022 thing, I was watching anarchists and people, rah, freedom and liberty, and it's a lot of it is do what thou wilt. It's one of the devil's most famous followers, Aleister Crowley's mantra, do what thou wilt. And that was the problem with my old content, my old self-improvement content. Yeah, it's fun to do what thou wilt, do whatever you you want to do. Be free, but it's very simple and it doesn't lead to happiness. True freedom is gratitude to the Most High Father in heaven and Jesus for doing what he did and coming here and doing what he did and following his law, the Most High Father's laws, as closely as possible. And that's why we require Jesus, because we can't. But it doesn't mean we can't try and ask him for help and strength. Baby steps sometimes, but we gotta do what we gotta do. We all have different circumstances. But yeah, as I mentioned earlier, it's just a matter of time. Just like they did with Fight Club, the biblical cosmology, just like they did with that. They're gonna invade this space and fill it up with a bunch of malarkey. So be ready for that. I'm not insulting your intelligence, just reminding, pray for knowledge, wisdom, and discernment. And the Father in heaven and Jesus, we've got your back. They've got our back. They'll keep coming up with new strategies and new documentaries, which there's already been dozens and dozens trying to disprove Jesus and compare him to other deities and that he didn't exist, or he was just a magician. That he did exist. He's the only begotten Son of God, of the Most High Father. And let's be grateful to him and the Father. Because I tell you what, if Jesus was just a magician, Lazarus would have came out like a tweaked out zombie, stinking and gross. And no, Jesus revitalized every cell in his body and brought him back to life. Show me a magician that can do that. Just one example. One of the many reasons I'm an introvert is I never feel I have anything fulfilling to converse with people. So it's good to get into some medium depth to deep topics to talk about in this niche and you wonderful people. In case you haven't realized, I can be a little stern and edgy, and I didn't come into this to make friends. I've made more than a few, and that's an additional benefit, but that's not my specific purpose here. If I hurt some feelings along the way, that's the way she goes, bubs. I'm here to tell you what I feel is true in my heart, and making a few friends along the way is a pleasant side benefit. Something that some people seem to fail to realize in this little season is that the Most High Father is still in control. I think this is the big test for our souls. I'll use the example of when I was a manager. I would really respect and appreciate the people that sincerely showed me respect, but put their head down and went to work and were humble, but did an extremely good job. And the people that I couldn't stand were the ones that would artificially suck up to me. And usually those were the ones that would get less work done, almost every time. It worked for some managers, but it didn't work for me. So I respected the people who sincerely respected me, and didn't care for the ones who were fake cookie cutters. And for lack of better examples, I think that's what the Father wants from us, obviously. And the evil people have failed more than you think in this little season. That's why I think they have to put the pedal to the metal now. Maybe they realize that you might as well go fast, because they failed going slower certain times. The classic definition of insanity. Doing the same thing over and over and expecting a different result. And a lot of people, especially people in the conspiracy realm, give them far too much power. As I said, the Most High Father is still in control. He could shut this down in a second if he wanted to. They can't touch a hair on your head unless the Father allows it. But they've certainly had some big wins in this short season. The Federal Reserve was a huge one. And I'm sure you guys can think of at least a dozen examples. But that was a big one. I actually heard that the Rothschilds at one of their mansions has a chair for Satan at the head of the table. Take that for what you will, but it certainly wouldn't surprise me. And the flooding of certain peoples into countries is a is a huge problem too. And the main problem that I've noticed is that they don't care. Like, I'm not like a patriotic person. I'm not like, yay, Canada, or by no means, but like I try to care for the Father's land that he created, and these people, they just don't care. They have no respect. They litter more than anybody I've ever seen. I'm just talking about people who are not originally from this country or any given country. They're just there for the free ride, most of them. And speaking of litter and trash, like trash is a great example of Satan's little season. The amount of litter and trash in certain cities and countries is unbelievable. There is no need for all the plastic. There is no need for the way we are doing things. There could be much better way of doing things. The devil has totally trashed the Most High's creation in this little season. Like and drop a comment for the good old I'll go to the rhythm if you haven't yet. In regards to the people above that we give so much power to, they do seem to fight each other sometimes. However, usually, if not almost always, it's a show to achieve their goals, hence the world wars or wars in general. And only in Satan's little season would the name Jesus Christ be used as a mild, family-friendly curse word, and everyone seems to say it. When I became closer to Jesus and the Father, you notice it right away, and people use it on YouTube and everywhere all the time. It drives me nuts. And if I ever use it, I kind of think about it for a second, whether it be I use the Lord's name in vain or Jesus's, and I'll think about it for a second, and I'll look up and say, like, I meant that, I mean it. Like, I need your help right now, or yes. So, at least catch yourself. Anyhow, I didn't want to bring up everything else and regurgitate stuff that I've learned from other channels. And a lot of you people have put some excellent comments. When all these companies started to push the message, like you'd see all these stickers on the front of grocery stores and Disney and like current Marvel and things of that nature. I'm sure you know exactly what I'm talking about.
The message.
You would almost think that these companies, Bud Light too, by the way, they seem not to mind losing money. And yes, it's either that they would rather lose money just to push the message from the evil one, or the evil one has somehow convinced those in those companies to do so, because it's clearly not a profitable strategy. The longer we have this new lens of looking at our reality now, the more we can see it just in everyday situations, people, countries, and things. And like an example, as Satan does with his inversion, he's turned North America, the remnants of the Millennial Reign here, into the hoods and ghettos, as you'll see in the footage of this video. The more and more we think about it, the more and more it makes sense. The little season makes sense, as opposed to Jesus being gone for 2,000 years. Especially the way we can clearly see that he spoke to the people in front of him at the time. All the verses and scriptures are in the pinned comment in the description. And yes, in this footage you can see a lot of, in my opinion, I would think would be Millennial Reign homes. I think some of the ones with the castle-like curved bricks up to the spires, and also the ones with the flat roof and the roof that clearly slopes down in front of the house with the small-looking trellises and stuff. There'll be some examples of those in here. And the tall, narrow windows with the curved tops are definitely some tall tale signs, in my opinion. Speaking of the comments, I got a couple. I didn't know this was still a thing. I I thought of it a long time ago when I first started learning about Tartaria and stuff and the mud flood, and it just kind of crossed my mind once. It was the Great Flood, the mud flood, but there's some people that still think that, and that makes absolutely no sense, because the Great Flood would have decimated anything in front of it. Like, yeah, some of the giant steps and stuff you find at the bottom of the ocean, quite possibly could be from the Great Flood era, but yeah, nothing that's we see standing on the surface here. When I first heard the little season thing in the Bible when I was younger, without obviously giving any context to it, I kind of pictured the episode of the Simpsons where there's like monsters and the one-eyed aliens enslaving the Simpsons. That's how I kind of envisioned the little season, but in reality, it's not much different. It's just cloaked to appear different. If you think about it, for example, in Ohio and West Virginia, the old coal mining towns, like he trains us to think that it's great that we have a job putting food on the table, even though clearly, like in that case, it's shortening your lifespan with the black lung. And a lot of these towns were owned by the coal mining companies, and you were issued currency by those companies, and you could only spend them at the company store. That's definitely got little season written all over it. And I never really did, but I gave it a little more credence before I knew about this stuff. But it's best definitely not to put any stock in like on the people talking about their dreams online. And yes, you can have a dream, like I can have a dream about Jesus, and it could happen, and Jesus could give you dreams, but I don't think he's gonna give people prophecies in these times. I could be wrong, and forgive me if I'm wrong, Father, but if we are in the little season, the books could be sealed and there are no more prophets. Yeah, people's dreams online is definitely overrated and not worth the time and attention some people give them. And speaking of inversions in the little season, you get the ugly devil that they give us in the media, whereas in reality, he's probably the most, or one of the most aesthetically pleasing creatures that the Most High God ever created. Oh, I'm sure he could probably shapeshift into whatever form he would want, but as I'm sure you've heard before, evil comes as angels of light at times. The evil one wants you to be in fear of tribulation instead of just trusting the Father in heaven. And I was guilty of that. When the old demic started a few years ago, I went on a prepping spree. I was prepping like crazy. And I told myself, like, this is the Father telling me to do this, and the Most High is speaking to me, and I could have been wrong. It could have just been out of fear, and I was trying to convince myself that. But prepping wasn't a bad thing. I had a surplus of food from before the inflation skyrocketed, and I got all kinds of cool little gadgets and tools. But if you were to ask me 4 years ago, would the big SHTF have happened by now, I would have said 99.9999% sure it would be. I'd be using all these tools and these preps for sure. And I was wrong. With all the information going around and everybody being deceived right now, that's what the little season is all about. We see it everywhere. It's good not to be proud and to still know we always have things to learn, and we could be wrong about things, and to not be prideful or arrogant or pretentious, and to be down to earth and based, for lack of a better term, and don't pity or look down on others, and just to pray for yourself and your enemies. Pray for and the neutral people. And for the most part, there are some exceptions, but don't ask the tax-exempt people who work in the evil systems for answers. You can get their opinion, but don't take it as gospel, literally and figuratively. Ask the Father. The Father will show you. Sincerely ask him, and he will show you. The majority of people who combat the idea of this millennial reign and Satan's seasons don't seem to understand the basics of how it's laid out. Many of them will bring up their own points to try to dismantle it by defending false history. We know you can't do that because it just can't be done. So you can't say, oh, well, it didn't happen because this is how history is. Well, no, that's not. That defeats the purpose of what we are talking about. And a lot of people think Armageddon is the very, very end, but then they ignore the new heaven and the new earth, and whoever combats this don't seem to understand the chronology of where we're coming from. And for some people, it seems, even though it's strengthened mine, it's strengthened many of your faith, some people, I don't know, it seems to dismantle their faith a little, and they start to ask, like, where are we now, and what does this make us? And yes, it's because they don't understand the chronology of how it's laid out. We are in the little season, and this doesn't mean that Jesus or the Father in heaven has abandoned us. If anything, we are an important part. We are, instead of not being mentioned in Scripture, we are mentioned in Scripture, just to a lesser extent that they previously believed or still believe with the coming tribulation. And don't worry, guys, new heaven and new earth, and it's still a tribulation. Don't worry,
Not entirely sure how he imagined that one working out, but whatever.
A generation soon we'll be able to see that too. I personally do believe there are clear, established rules for the devil from the Father. During this short season, even though he does have more leeway, he still has specific guidelines that he has to adhere to. Otherwise, it almost wouldn't be fair. Like, for example, the devil isn't omnipresent. However, who knows? Maybe he's permitted during the short season through technology to sort of be omnipresent because of the surveillance and the webcams and the addiction to black mirrors. It's unbelievably strong. And even if people knew, well, I'm not going to go on a big rant about that. I don't know what the deep right, for lack of a better term, is still going on with Mr. Donald there. But they used to have this big thing that the hats and him are playing 5D chess. Well, if that's the case, then the devil is playing 5,000D chess in his little season here. But the Father's playing infinity D chess. So I'm not worried. I know we're in good hands. The medical system, to me, is proof to me in itself that we're in the little season. That was my first wake-up call when I was getting into alternative medicine. I was learning about the companies and the pesticide companies and just all the unscrupulous behavior going on in the health industry. Oh, I could do a 5-hour video just about that. But that on its own could be proof of the little season. From how they used to do a long time ago, how they used to do lobotomies. There was no rhyme or reason or like even technique to it. They would just jab a pick into the side of your eye, into your brain, until they caused enough brain damage to be like, all right, they're about a vegetable. And to now, with the pharmakia and the treatments, I'm not going to start because I could go on forever, but the medical system in itself is proof to me of a small season. In regards to the architecture, let's hypothetically say that it wasn't the Millennial Kingdom. To me, that's just as amazing that people were able to create divinely inspired, incredible mathematical and artistic creative projects with the talent given to us from the Creator himself, the Father in heaven. If you look at it both ways, it's amazing. It's proof of God. A lot of people ask, like, why were these structures, like, how could we get away with something so expensive and decadent? And these are the people who start getting into the Tartaria and this type of research. And not enough people ask those questions. So expensive and decadent. How come they were building this stuff during wars and pioneering? And it just doesn't add up. And it's quality material and massive stones. We could do it today now with all the machinery, but it still takes an amazing amount of time, and I don't even know if it compares. And considering they didn't have the machinery, and we all know this stuff. And if you don't, now you do, and you have a basis of research to go upon. But also people who do know this ask, like, why so expensive and decadent in regards to, like, materialism? And if you look at the Old Testament, like, and don't get me started on some of the people who call the Most High in the Old Testament something else.
Stop him!
And the thing that proved to me that that's not even a thing is when Jesus met with Moses. And was it Elijah? And okay, so if they were, so no, that's the same Most High Father, okay? But at any rate, in the Old Testament, there were like specific cubits and materials, and like the Father in heaven and we were so specific on how we built temples and the Ark of the Covenant. And yes, he wants us to be artistic and take pride in our work. It's a place to live. Like I alluded to earlier, worst case scenario, if it wasn't the Millennial Reign, it shows that we were in an incredible time of peace, a wonderful time to live, as opposed to what his story presents to those who believe it. And that when you love the Father and Jesus, even if it wasn't the Millennial Reign, it shows that your nations are more protected by them when you trust and believe in them. I truly believe that. All in all, when you look at the graph of the countries with the highest percentage of Christianity versus the lowest, you kind of see like, these guys don't have it too bad, and haven't had it too bad. Some exceptions here and there, obviously, but the ones that are low, you look at that on the map and it's like, kind of makes sense. Extremely interesting. But yes, I don't see any time in the history that we're given that we would have had such peace and prosperity to be able to build the insane amount of architecture, beautiful, understatement architecture that we have. And if you could turn the clock back to like 1800, teleport back to 1800 in North America and Europe, and it literally and figuratively would look like a kingdom. And in some places in Europe, obviously, it still does. Just the top few feet and tips of some of these spires and peaks at the top of these towers and cathedrals are artistic wonders that would have taken some serious time to create, let alone how did they get it up there. It's a sophisticated pulley system. I had some people referring to like conventions and get together for Millennial Reign, Little Season type people. I would prefer just to call ourselves Jesus people. If we gave ourselves a name, we're Jesus people. But once you get into the conventions and the get together, that's when you start getting controlled opposition, infiltration. Like just look at Mr. Earth Flat Dave and people like that. Like I'm kind of an introvert, not a needy person. It's not like I'm gonna get one going in my small area, but hey, if you want, more power to you. That's not a bad idea. But on larger scales, you risk some serious infiltration. But you just pray on to protect the group if you're doing that. And I remember back in the the old Demic when I went to one of these freedom get-togethers, and I was hoping to meet some like-minded people, and I was just like, man, these are not my people. I met one born-again Christian who was an amazing dude, but other than that, I was like, this is not my people. But I'm sure it'll catch on, and I'm sure there'll be more things like that happening. But personally, I would back away from giving us any specific name except Jesus people, or something Jesus. Don't call yourself saints. We're certainly not saints. We're a wicked generation. That's why we need Jesus. We're Jesus people. We need him. And going back to the architecture and things we can do, yeah, we can do amazing things now. Like right here, Windsor, Detroit area, they're building the Gordie Howe Bridge, which is, I got a close-up look at the construction there, and just the mass scale of it, and the amount of materials used to make it is unbelievable. However, you gotta ask, like, how did we do it then? We did it better then. Just the skyscrapers I see here. Detroit's right across the river from me here. I look at the skyscrapers, and it's amazing how they have all the new crappy looking skyscrapers surrounding the old world ones in the middle. There is some, I forget the specific names off the back of my hand, but there are some really cool old world, extremely high skyscrapers in Detroit, but they got it surrounded by all the tin foil ones. And I had a few people call me an anti-S word for some of the comments I made in a few of the part 1 and 2 Millennial Kingdom videos. And first of all, a Semite is a Middle Eastern person, so that term doesn't even make sense. But no, I'm not. And when I was on BitChute back in the day, I suppose you could say I was. That place will turn you into one. But an example I'll make, it's like saying, it would be like saying, oh, the Italians. Those Italians.
Take it easy. We're not making a Western here.
When you're actually just talking about the Mafia. So we almost have to find a new name for that, because when we say that, we're talking about the Mafia, not the J word. We're talking about their version of the Mafia. Very rich and powerful version. And I was also called Eurocentric, which, you know, I'm going to agree with that, because that's where the majority of this evidence is. That's where the majority of the nations that are still Christian are. And what, do you expect me to be a master in, like, Sri Lankan history? That would be like, let me give a funny example. How about, that would be like, okay, today we're going to talk about the greatness of Sweden and Norway. I really like Sweden and Norway, and I'm going to dedicate all my channel and my videos to Sweden and Norway. Or how about, yo, man, we gonna make a whole channel dedicated to Iceland, man. Cause y'all know I like the ice on my fingers and around my neck, man. So we gonna be doing all kinds of Iceland videos. So, yes, I am Eurocentric. Just like African Americans are more drawn to their history, and people from Asia are more drawn to their history. You know what? I think the Most High kind of designed us to be with our kind for the most part, you know? Like, bruh, I'm half Slav and half Germanic. I'm as Eurocentric as you can get, so, at any rate. I guess I should have typed that so I could have got it off my chest that way.
I hope we can all learn something from this. You too can be an oiled up running black man if you keep at it.
A lot of people say that this is too speculative and there's too much speculation. But this is the part where there is speculation, and speculation takes place because we do have some serious hard facts. And now we're just hypothesizing and putting things together. And it's extremely invigorating and interesting and causes us to marvel at the possibilities that we didn't know about before. So if you're new to this topic, remember what's said here and take notes if you require it, and watch parts 1 through 3 with keeping this stuff I say in part 4 in mind, because part 1 will give you some of the bread and butter, the meat and potatoes of what we're talking about here. And speaking of speculations, there have been a lot of micro speculations of what Jesus can do or what he did in certain periods of time. But when you're doing the micro speculations about Jesus, just remember, don't put any limitations on him, because he has all power. Jesus has all power given to him by the Almighty Father in heaven. And to reiterate again, he has all power in the heavens and the earth. He can do anything he wants. However, he is all wise and knows exactly how and when to use it. That's why I'm not a preterist, I'm not an ist, I'm not any ist or ism. I'm a Jesus-ist. I'm a Jesus guy, and we're Jesus people. Please bear with me on this one. I have bullet points, but I wouldn't even know where to start putting them in any form of sequential order. However, all the letters from Paul, including the ones that were destroyed, were all actually officially recorded to have been written before 70 AD, which 70 AD is obviously when folks with our training of thought believe that Armageddon happened. That was the second coming of Jesus. Hence all the scriptures about him doing so. Check the pinned comment of this video if you haven't seen them yet. And yes, since this topic has grown in popularity, it still hasn't had any new, good, or relevant debunks that I've seen, and I'm open to it. I'm an open book to any scrutiny or valid arguments that oppose this. However, I haven't seen any, but new evidence that helps this is growing by the day. I've always liked like old blights and ghettos and hoods, but not like the more recent buildings. I always liked like the skeletons of the old world. And I didn't know what I was looking at the time, but I was always fascinated with it. I have a lot of footage of that. In part 2 specifically is all Detroit, and part 3 is some driving tours, and specifically in the US, mostly the Rust Belt. But I've always been fascinated with that. It always really appealed. I always got a good dopamine hit when I saw that stuff. And now maybe I intuitively knew, maybe deep down, that those were like corpses of the old world hidden in plain sight. Maybe in a morbid way, that's kind of why I liked them. The lifeless remains of a society full of vibrance and life. And you'd be shocked to see how many are just covered up with siding or really commie looking facades on them. If you were to take off some of these facades in downtowns and old parts of towns and see the bare bones of the building, they'd probably look 100 times better, even as aged as they are. And yeah, they do look 1,000 years old. Like bricks don't decompose fast. My house is well over 100 years old, and the bricks look brand new. Don't lose hope. Even in this little season, the Almighty Father has put boundaries up, and he's still in full control. It shows that he's in full control because he's the one that's allowing this to happen. And don't woe is me and why would he do this? He works in mysterious ways, and I trust him. The more you contemplate this and look at it from this perspective, day after day it fills in more gaps with truth amongst the devil's lies and the programming that we've been put through. We're all still programmed. We've had going through the school system and going through the indoctrination, especially us Christian truthers. We've gone through a lot of trauma and programming, and we're so strong for pushing through it. Give yourself a healthy pat on the back for that. Not prideful, but just encouragement. And speaking of the programming too, it's funny hearing people still regurgitating old truther sayings in the comments and stuff, and that's all they'll put. They won't even put extra perspective on it, like realize.
This guy is talking about nonsense.
And break through that stuff too. It's once the old demic happened and I went on to alternative platforms, and little by little I started to realize that both sides were controlled. The devil controls both sides. Remember when the demic happened, and if you were on alternative platforms, remember all the characters that suddenly sprung up out of nowhere, the Medage and the Tenpennies, and I think Stu Peters is still kicking around. He had like a rap career. I'm getting off topic, but at any rate, that's a little season for you. The only person I'll watch from the alternative platforms once in a while, just to get a rundown on the news, is the Dollar Vigilante Jeff. And I used to really like him, and I don't anymore. He's way too new age, and he quotes Jesus out of context where I just want to punch right through the screen sometimes. But I when he does that, I do say a little prayer for him. But he does question the small hat people, and
people keep kicking them out of other countries after they keep stealing
the structures at time.
Why don't we build anything like this anymore? Like it's so detailed and intricate and all made with basically stone with a actual sculpture of a guy apparently carved out of marble. I don't know, why can't we do this stuff anymore? Well, I think a lot of this stuff was all from basically past cultures, you could say, or basically the Tartarians, who had all kinds of technology to do all this stuff, and it's all been hidden from us. Like, look at this thing. This thing is incredibly impressive and detailed. And it's just one of like hundreds of things here in Edinburgh.
And even though I'm not the hugest fan of that concept, say what you will about the Tartarian deception, but at least it gets people in our ballpark. It gets them thinking at least partially our way. And those specific people would be way easier to win over than your average churchgoer, because most of us recently had that training of thought about Tartaria. For just a basic rundown of the news that's going on in the world at any given week, from a more conspiratorial perspective, Jeff isn't bad. He at least provides the news. Just skip or disregard his new age, we're in a video game ramblings. He brings up some good points about just not participating in the little season, like in regards to voting. He doesn't actually say little season, but you know what I mean. Pray for that guy, though. I've lost a lot of trust and respect for him over the past several years. And it's best not to, if they aren't filled with love for Jesus and the Holy Spirit, it's best not to talk to people about this stuff. The whole pearls before swine thing. If they're open to it, try your best not to start an argument. If they do start get argumentative, de-escalate or make them laugh. And don't feel bad if you can't cause them to see things your way. Jesus himself, when he was here in the flesh, had deniers, so don't feel bad. And don't appear crazy. Lead by example. There's far too many people that appear crazy, and nobody's going to take you seriously when you're neurotic.
There is no Santa Claus! Hey kids, there is no Santa Claus!
And a lot of people with faith still use the Satan's little season term evolution a lot. And speaking of the programming I mentioned earlier, we have to get stuff like that out of our vocabulary, because there's obviously such thing as microadaptation, and it seems to happen fast, like in regards to height and appearance and things of that nature. The Almighty Father seems to have caused a human adaptive process that can seemingly, it looks like it happens over just several generations, and not many. in regard to surviving climate, and like, for example, how the Norwegians are so tall, and well, I'm not going to use any other example of ethnic backgrounds because it'll probably get this video on the no-no list. I got to keep using my Tony speech.
What we did to the Vladmeister, apparently we're talking the Ruslans.
I do like the theory, though, that there's sterilization of people through the food, water, medicine, and the sharp things, and obviously the Planned Parenthood situation, which bothers me to even say that word. But that would make sense if there's a certain amount of souls to recycle it back into the system, for lack of better term, through resurrection. Which I'm not 100% sure about that, but it does make sense in regard to everything else, and that's in Revelation. So that could obviously be the modus operandi behind causing less births to happen. I get a lot of comments on my part 2 and 3 Millennial King videos. Why don't you talk about this? Why don't you talk about that? And I can't go over everything in every video. That's why I've made several long ones. And the first one is the best for just the bread and butter and the meat and potatoes. But one thing I haven't talked about, and I can't imagine I will talk about, is the orphan trains and the Cabbage Patch Kids. Not that I don't think that that's huge and valid in this, is that I'm not passionate enough to give a really good 2 cents an original summary on that stuff. So feel free to look that up after this video, obviously, if you're interested in that. And just the worst case scenario for the little season, which would still be pretty darn cool, is that it was just a period where the Christian churches ran without any deception at all, and without usury, with no monetary value attached. There are ways in a free society to ensure that everybody gets a roof over their head and food on their table and a comfortable life, and that could definitely be accommodated for priests and their helpers. That's what communism kind of turns upside down and inverts it. You know how the devil likes to do that. In regard to what we know now, I like seeing little bits of information from people who aren't like truthers and don't have skin in the game, kind of putting these things together. Like this good channel Living Ironically in Europe was talking about how there's certain parts of the Balkans that are so beautiful, and then there's other parts that are just commie blocks.
Serbia. Another thing that's quite annoying when it comes to the cities and towns in Serbia are the commie blocks and new buildings, aka the commie blocks 2.0. Now, during the time of communism, Yugoslavia implemented a special policy called out with the old, in with the new, where many old buildings were demolished and replaced with commie blocks in a way to industrialize the country.
And then you got this guy, Joey B, who put 2 and 2 together and been talking about how society has basically been decomposing with how progressive we are with technology and caring about ethnicities and races and inclusiveness, that we've digressed and our living standards have plummeted. And he describes it personally in his own way, and little does he know he's describing the little season. And do me a favor, and please just ignore the bricks in the background. I know they're there.
I feel like there was a bit of pride to be a human being at one point. Even if they didn't have a lot of money, they still made an attempt to wear their best clothes when they went out in public. Now people just wear anything, do anything now. They wear their pajamas in the grocery store. Nobody cares. But the thing is like, if the places you go to don't care, then why should anyone care? Take a walk through downtown LA. You think that's something to be proud of? You're going to dress up in a suit and go to the store? No. Why would you? Look what happened to Detroit. It was the #1 car manufacturing city in America. And now it looks like a third world country because they all moved out. Yeah, the entire industry moves out.
Because this stuff couldn't just happen overnight. Like, I don't think my house was built in the Millennial Kingdom, but it's a beautifully well-built house. But probably not as good as what they were knocking out back then, so it had to progressively get worse. The devil took baby steps. That's why I was wrong when the the demic happened a few years ago, and I prepped like crazy, and I got a little bit into fear mode. Thank goodness I was faithful in the Most High God. That did keep me more centered. And who knows, he probably put me through that for a reason. But disasters do happen overnight, but something like that, like an economic meltdown, it's not just going to happen overnight. It takes time. Because if you were to ask me 4 years ago if we would have made it to this election, I would have said, no way. And clearly I'm wrong. And in one of my MK videos, I spoke about the coal mining industry and how that's a great example of something the devil would implement in his little season, where the coal companies would basically own the town and own the town store and give company credits instead of just normal US dollars, so they would have to spend it at the company store. And yeah, speaking of the Rust Belt in West Virginia, they have an income trap right now, where it's almost more beneficial to be below the poverty line.
And they don't have money, so you maybe have to, they're put in a position where they feel like they either need to shoplift some bread or go hungry that night.
Because if you make a certain amount, and it can be 25, you could get a 25-cent raise an hour, and that'll put you over that line where you can't get food stamps anymore. So it's more beneficial for them to stay low so they can get food than to make more money and get no food and have to pay for it all.
Today, West Virginia is a state where 17% of the population relies on food stamps to survive. 2 food banks are tasked with feeding 1 in every 7 adults and 1 in every 5 children. It's a place where being poor and without food is pretty much accepted as the norm.
I have to expand things out so that I know that they all have food in their bellies and that they're well fed. If you don't have the necessities up in your cabinets, you will struggle, possibly starve without it.
And there's examples like this all over the world. Like, I didn't know Sweden was the way it was until recently. They can't buy booze barely, except for certain times. Sweden is the most backwards, horrible sounding country I've ever heard of in the name of progression. It's unbelievable.
For 1 kilogram of chicken breast in Sweden, that's going to cost over $12 on average. Over $12 for a kilogram of chicken. And if you compare that to the price in the US, chicken breasts price per kilogram, that's 3.3 to 4 US dollars. So 3 to 4 times the price for chicken in Sweden.
In socialist Scandinavia, it is unseemly to have something as bourgeois as your own personal washing machine. Stated simply, it's communal laundry facilities in apartment blocks. Most Swedes live in Soviet-style concrete blocks, and the individual apartments are not even set up to allow the installation of individual washing machines. Instead, each complex has a designated washing room which has washing machines and drying facilities. To use the washing machine, you have to sign up for a 1 to 2 hour slot, which typically involves a half-week waiting time. People often have to take days off work in order to do their washing because they have not been able to do their washing in the evening or at weekends for months. Fitted bed sheets do not exist in Sweden. Really? They don't. Instead, you just have a bed-sized sheet which you lay on top of the mattress, which inevitably falls off during the night. I repeat, there are no fitted bed sheets in Sweden. The toilets in malls, stations, etc. cost €2 a go, and restaurants 100% keep toilets locked. If you're a customer, you can ask for the key, but even when you've bought a meal, they sometimes charge extra to use it. In Stockholm, 60% of all children and babies I saw were looked after by men. In one cafe, I saw upwards of 20 men all pushing prams or trying to catch up with friends while wearing Eskimo-style papooses. Rooms so small you have to sit on the window ledge looking moody. No wonder then that this country has produced Greta Thunberg. Sweden's the only country that has the word gatrunka. Loosely translated, gatrunka means to cry while
And this little season thing is the epitome of once you see it, you can't unsee it. Like, most of us have always known that the NWO was here. I was working near a bunch of strip malls one day, and I looked around at the Burger King, McDonald's, and the KFC and all the lifeless strip mall stores, and This was probably a decade ago, and I just said to myself, the New World Order is here. It's not coming, it's here, it's established. And little did I know, I was basically talking about the little season. And even in this season, like, I looked up the best charities to donate to in 2024. And none of it was to feed people. None of it was just good money going to humanity. It was all these for certain diseases and stuff like that. And anybody who knows anything about the pharmaceutical industry in this little season, it's all petrochemicals. It's not going to cure anybody. The top charities to donate to in 2024 was the most abominable thing I think I've ever seen. Speaking of West Virginia, there's a lot of good charities there that you can donate food to with a monthly payment to hungry families. That's some of the poorest areas in North America there. And the other thing is, in the little seasons, the devil made it so cool to use the alternative names. People have no qualms about saying universe and source. It doesn't embarrass people to use these highfalutin spiritual words, but they get embarrassed to say Jesus in a positive way that supports him. The only time I ever hear people say Jesus is when they say his name in vain or for some kind of joke, and it makes me angry. I know a fraction of how Peter felt when he's chopping ears. It's infuriating, and you wanna defend your man. He doesn't need it. That's why he healed the soldier after Peter did that. But that's why I relate to Peter, man. I felt his rage.
Austin, wait a minute!
And I can relate to him too, because I know what it's like to deny at times and give us strength that we don't do that. Because, man, if we could hear the roosters crowing today, it would be all out roosters. That's all you'd hear. And the Bible is not a pick and choose one sentence. Because you could pick any sentence, single sentence in the Bible and make it mean anything you want. You have to put it together paragraph by paragraph as a whole. A lot of these online people that claim to be Christians will put together one-liners they found in the Bible to tickle your ears. Jesus and the Most High Father don't tickle your ears. They hit you. When you get hit, they hit you like a ton of bricks with awe and wonder. There ain't no tickling. The devil likes to tickle. When the apostles went to Greece and places where they were still worshiping the old gods, like the Greek mythology gods, and they were there for a reason, because those statues responded sometimes. They were doing real things. They were real entities, if you ask me. And when the good word of Jesus Christ hit them, they realized that their gods were dead. Your gods are dead. And yeah, they were probably like, no wonder they haven't been responding. Your gods are dead. Jesus Christ is here. And a real war in heaven did happen. And I imagine it's 1,000 times more epic than any comic book movie or anything of that nature you could imagine. What you used to read that you think would happen in the future, and you would wonder and marvel about, well, it already happened. We can marvel and wonder about it in that regard. And who knows, maybe the Almighty Father will be kind enough to show us one day. Even though I think once we're with the Father and Jesus in our glorified body, I don't think we'll be in such peace and joy and serenity with them. I don't think any of that, all this stuff that we speculate and are crazy about, believe it or not, we probably won't even care anymore. I don't think we'll be tugging at our Father's robe saying, can we see Bigfoot? Can we see the Loch Ness Monster? You know what I mean. And back to the little season, I did a video about the T-vestigation influencers, and this person's this and this person's that. They're all inverted, and to me, they're just a deception to make people look crazy. Make people who know some real valid truth, hit them with a small percentage of truth and make them think that all this stuff is going on. So, because I see it with the people. Like, you don't want to be like those people. You don't want to be the people posting everywhere this kind of stuff, because nobody will take you seriously when you do have real serious stuff to say, because the real serious stuff is about our salvation in Jesus. And this other stuff, if you want to be entertained by it, by yourself in your own time, but pick your spots. Learn to keep your mouth shut when it comes to stuff like that. I know most of you know better, but some of you don't. And Satan's little season deception even crawls into diet. Like, why do you think all this paleo diet is everywhere? The paleo diet. Sure, I think a diet of just meat and fruit, if you just ate meat and fruit, you'd have very low allergens, you'd have enough fiber and potassium and sodium and protein, and that would be a great diet, just fruit and meat. But they've influenced this paleo diet where it's always, like evolving like our caveman ancestors, eat like our caveman ancestors, when that's just feeding this little season lie. We evolved to eat this. No, we didn't evolve. There's micro adaptations, like I said earlier, but this is all BS. And that's why I think they're pushing this paleo diet. There's nothing wrong with eating low carb, just not when there's satanic alternate influence behind it, behind the message. Because bread right now is terrible for you, unfortunately. The wheat we have now is not the wheat they had, let's say, 1,000 years ago in Jesus' time. More like 1,000 years ago in Jesus' time. Wink, wink, nudge, nudge. It was probably a little more than that, obviously, but you know what I mean. But the man, like an example of that, like God wanted us to eat bread. He rained manna from the heavens. Manna was probably perfect. It probably had all the B vitamins and the cofactors, because people say, oh, well, plants don't have creatine and taurine. The Father knew what he was doing. When he gave us that food, who knows, maybe it even contained creatine and taurine, but it had the amino acid cofactors that could convert into that. Ancient bread was probably a marvelous food. You could probably live off it. I still wouldn't go that far. You'd still probably require some fish, but I'll have to do a diet video because that's kind of my old specialty. Feel free to ask any questions in the comments, and please feel free to drop a comment. It helps the algorithm. And like the video. The obligatory like the video and subscribe and notification bell. And then there's the people who want the rapture or the day of the Lord. You don't want the day of the Lord. Why do these people want this? I don't think it's going to happen now that we know what we know, but they want to be caught up in the clouds and to see people suffer in fire and brimstone. Like, it's very weird, and I see that a lot. Like, they're so resentful and bitter to people that they want them to suffer.
We're a little more progressive and ahead of the curve here in San Francisco.
I really get the impression, and they make no qualms about it, that they want people to be damned. It's very backwards and disturbing. And all this Hebrew stuff too. Hebrew. If the Almighty Father wanted us to speak Hebrew, it would have been a lot larger option for us, I believe. And from the research I've done, all the current Hebrew, it's just Yiddish.
So?
I'm sorry, I'm a little late, you know.
It's not a big problem.
Yeah.
Was machst du?
It's just synagogue language. Forgive me if I'm wrong, Father, but I don't think Jesus or the Almighty Father will be impressed if you're going around saying shalom. Back to the caught up comment, when there's so many comments like, we are the chosen and the elect and the end is near, and there's such cookie cutter comments. And who says that? We are the chosen and the elect. That is so... Be humble. Like, no. You are not the chosen and the elect. Like, that reminds me too of a separate note a couple years ago when somebody asked Trump.
Trump 2024, y'all already know who we voting for. Vote for my uncle, period. Trump 2024. Trump, say the USA. MAGA.
they brought up Christianity, and Trump's like, oh yeah, I'm a Christian, and they was like, do you have anything to repent for? And he was like, no. Oh, be humble. The egomaniacal, narcissistic behaviors of the evil one have just engulfed this society. It's unbelievable.
Y'all, today is a daggone good day. I'm going to adopt a puppy.
Did you just giggle? What is going on here?
And I'm going to bring y'all along, so come with me to adopt a puppy.
Yeah, I'd rather skydive into a volcano.
And in the little season, they take advantage of our nature to want to do good things for their ultimate end goal. And that goes back to this inclusiveness stuff.
If you're a lesbian and you're struggling with knowing what exact calories you should be eating to lose weight,
they've brainwashed people to think that things that they're doing, I'll call it what the movie critic, the critical drinker calls it, the message. They take the message and think they're doing something good, when actually they're just destroying society.
Meanwhile, these are the same people who would consider these people extremists.
And my bad, it's not about society. It's about doing good for the Father and Jesus. And when you lack his discernment and his Holy Ghost in you, you're going to be taken advantage of by the devil. And you're going to think you're doing good things when you're not. And you're just doing him favors. It's cool when you hear people in these channels, these down-to-earth people that make videos on this topics, figuring things out on their own in their own way without the influence of others. Because it seems the truther space over the past several years, and especially now, it's just regurgitation. Just regurgitating lines they've heard that sound good and tickle their ears, and not enough logical speculation. As I recently had a comment on my art show upload of old paintings and depictions of Jesus, and a fellow brought up how Jesus is holding up the Baphomet fingers, like the Baphomet, and I said to him, what came first, the Baphomet or those paintings? And I know we can't trust history, but when it's several hundred years apart, there's a good probability that it's in the right order, because the first artistic rendering of the Baphomet was from like some psychopath in the 1800s, and those pictures of Jesus were recorded to be several hundred years older. So I can confidently say that they probably came before that, and the devil likes to steal and invert everything. So who knows what that sign Jesus was. It's actually a night, if you do it with the two fingers, it's very peaceful. He probably just like pointed and spoke that way. It's not like he's throwing up the OK sign and the 666s. He's holding up two fingers, dude. And back to the pearls before swine thing. If you ever want to know if it's even worth commenting or enlightening somebody in a kind way about a ridiculous comment that they made, sometimes you should know, like, not even to bother based on their comment, but just go click on their screen name and check out their channel. Like, there was this Israel Moore guy who was spouting all this nonsense in my comments, and then I clicked on his channel, and he had playlists that are how can I say this politely without actually swearing, but he had playlists of F these H words to sleep and stuff like that. So, okay, Israel Moore guy, I'm really going to trust you as a man of God. Sarcasm obviously intended. Don't feel bad if you can't sway people to be faithful or to adopt this theory. Like I said, just lead by example. Be a peaceful, kind-hearted, good person that exemplifies Jesus. And trust me, I need to work on that too. I'm pointing the finger at myself more than any of you right now. But don't feel bad if you can't, because we're literally in the time of deception. Just pray for them and lead by example. And don't fail to be consistent on prayer and reading scripture. The KJV is by far the most hated Bible, it seems. People who know though. The people who know it's the real deal.
But you just started reading the King James like a week ago. Only KJV. Why don't we just read the new King James version?
Thy hair's a flock of goats, yet go thy way.
Some say it has Masonic symbols, but it's 16. It's an old book. Like those could have been stolen. And everybody says King James was a Mason, and that's obviously a tactic to get conspiracy theorists to stay away from him. And people say Christianity was invented to control people. And that's one of the poorest arguments. I don't even know where to start. Jesus said buy a sword. Because too many so-called Christians are nice. They're nice and supplicative. They're basically simps. And you want to be kind, not nice. Because kind is authentic. Kind is tough love. If Christianity was invented to control people, I say no. It was altered to control people in the little season. But Christianity itself, following Christ in its authentic form, is anything but. And it's funny, they put some of this architecture and truth right in front of our face. Like every time I log on to Microsoft, there's like this new ruin or new old world building or cathedral or castle they're putting on my background. They have to show you some truth. I don't know how the rules work, but obviously Satan's gonna pick the way to show you the least amount of truth possible by still towing the lines of the rules given.
Congratulations, Captain Obvious. Here's your degree in media literacy, so you can go on to become a pretentious arsehole YouTuber, making 10-hour-long video essays about the philosophical undertones of the Powerpuff Girls.
Be extremely wary of those who say God told them to do something. I'll speculate on my own that maybe the Most High God did this for me to show me something, and forgive me if I'm wrong, Father. That's a good way to look at it. But these people who say God told them to do something, that's an enormous red flag for me. And if he told you to do something, you don't advertise it, you do it. But yes, Albert Pike basically wrote out the steps for the little season. If you look up Albert Pike, World War III, everything's outlined there quite perfectly. We are Jesus people, and that's the bottom line. We love Jesus, and we love the Most High Almighty Father in heaven. For the most part, when it comes to this niche, in this realm of topics, most people won't get it. There's few exceptions, but the far majority of people won't get it until they first come to the realization that the far majority of what they've been told by official sources is a lie. That seems to be the big red herring or canary in a coal mine, if I'm using those terms correctly, for who gets it or not. That's why us OGC theorists are mostly the ones who are down with this program. When trying to convince others of this theory, or at least have them become curious, we shouldn't have to try to convince others. That's a bad way of going about it in the first place. But you definitely don't want to have things that make us look bad when doing so. And just as a general appearance online, like yes, I've talked about don't care what others think, but also take some pride in your appearance and make people want to be genuinely curious about the information we're offering here. I'll mention a few now, but there are many, and if you think of any in particular, state them in the comments. But one of the problems is we state certain things as if they are fact, when we aren't sure they are 100% true yet. Like, for example, the shifting of the continents. There are a lot of people who state things as if that is 100% fact. When discussing these things, make a specific effort to specifically state whether it is fact or speculation. For example, you could say there's compelling evidence that Pangea was together, the continents were together, and they drifted apart, and it could have happened during the 70, give or take, AD Armageddon event. But do use disclaimers. Like I said, if there's compelling evidence, or at least say, in my opinion. Like, for example, something that is 100% true is that Jesus isn't a liar. And you can show them all the scriptures where it talks about him coming soon to their generation, the people he was talking to. That isn't an opinion. We can say that Jesus isn't a liar, and he said that. So we think that's 100% true. And all those scriptures are in the pinned comment. So yes, I think it's imperative that we verbally or type out specifically when we're saying these things, whether it's there's strong evidence pointing to the fact, or whether according to scripture this is true. Otherwise, you could just be discrediting your work and our work here. You know what I'm saying?
Right? Know what I'm saying? You're saying know what I'm saying too many times. 80 and 90 times? That's too many times.
What are you, from the department of know what I'm saying? You taking the know what I'm census? You counting my know what I'm saying?
Another small example would be 1776. You could say, the little season started in 1776.
This guy is talking about nonsense.
Or there's extremely compelling evidence to suggest that the little season may have started in 1776, and then present your examples. And be encouraging to the people who want to learn about this stuff, and don't be condescending. Like, don't say things like, you're getting there. Don't insult their intelligence. Even if they aren't very bright, don't insult their intelligence. Speak to people as equals, especially if they want to learn this stuff. Don't act like the sacred name people or New Agers or anybody who thinks they have some secret knowledge or anything like that. Let's not get into that territory, because it's easy for our egos to cause that to happen. We have the intellectual ammunition to cause our ego to grow and to go in a negative direction. You are getting there. I despise that.
We're just a little bit more protective of our environment here in San Francisco.
Or wrap your head around this. Oh boy. If the people who want to learn aren't swine and are inquisitive, yes, treat them as equals. And if they are inquisitive about this specific topic, they obviously aren't swine to begin with. So you can, in a non-pretentious manner, start casting some pearls. And as this grows, there's going to be all kinds of infiltration and deceptive categories that spring out of this. Think new Gnostic stuff contrary to the words of Jesus. Think mainstream programs, maybe on BBC and things of that nature. I even saw one kind of spring up, a short from a major news agency the other day, talk about these things, maybe even mention some cataclysm and new lost civilizations and stuff like that, and start tracking the narrative into the direction they want. And this is happening now, in my opinion, and will be happening more and more and more. And that's why I said earlier to be specific if it's your opinion, or if there's compelling evidence, or if it's 100% in our opinion. Like the scripture. The scripture is a house built on a rock, not sand. Some of the other stuff that we're speculating about, it could be built, the house could be built on some dirt and the foundation isn't pounded in deep enough. So let's not act like it's 100% fact yet. But the stuff we know is built on a rock, that's fine. It's fact. It's built on a rock. It's scripture. Jesus isn't a liar. And it's amazing and fun to speculate about extra land, beyond the poles and the moon map stuff and all that, and twists on all kinds of unproven conspiratorial topics. However, the most important part of all of this, you can have the extracurricular fun, but the main part is to stay on base. Stay on Jesus' word. Stay in this camp. The camp of the saints, if you will. The beauty of the Bible is what I'm sure a lot of truthful and honest, non-cookie cutter people can resonate with too, is that it doesn't sugarcoat anything. It tells you the brutal, honest truth from Genesis to Revelation. And that's one of the many, many, many reasons a lot of people have a problem with it. They can't handle the truth. They don't like being smacked in the face with reality. Ah, frack! They'd rather live in cookie cutter, medicated dreamland in Satan's little season. I'm not going to bother putting the clip in because it's a cookie cutter clip. But if I did put a cookie cutter clip here, it'd be Jack Nicholson, "You can't handle the truth." And there are few and far between, probably because they don't get as many donations or promotions, and they're held down. But there's honest historians out there, the real ones that believe what the apostles believed. And literally, Most High Almighty Father, Godspeed to them, because they're the rare ones who aren't cookie cutters and uphold truth and don't sugarcoat.
And then all the historical evidence we have afterwards attests to their conviction that that's what they saw. I know that as a historian, they must have seen something. The early church exploded on the scene of the ancient world with the claim that Jesus had risen from the dead as their central proclamation. Enemies of the idea of Jesus' divinity turned from their skepticism to claim that they had seen the resurrected Jesus.
Like what happened to the saints. People don't die to uphold lies. They die for truth. And in regards to the millennial kingdom, the splendor and the beautiful churches and cathedrals in European cities and towns I'm probably putting in this video right now, the buildings and the kingdom itself weren't these artistic masterpiece cities, but these artistic masterpiece cities were a byproduct of the kingdom. We took care of things, and we had the time and creativity and lower stress levels to create magnificent things like this with our God-given abilities when given the opportunity to do so. These were a byproduct of the amazing time we were living in. And I'll say in my opinion, but I'm pretty darn close to putting my 100% stamp of approval of what I just said too. And for people who are against it, all this splendor and richness, and it's not really richness and cost, that probably wasn't an issue at the time. And the kingdom of heaven is like pure gold and rubies and rhinestones, and it's the most magnificent thing we'll, if we have the opportunity to do so, God willing, we'll ever lay our eyes on. So why wouldn't he allow us to have a fraction of that to take care of here on earth during the millennial kingdom? Because yes, splendor and cities like that are mentioned all over the Bible. Verses on adornment, and Revelation 21:19 in the KJV describes the city as being adorned with precious stones, stating the foundations of the city walls were decorated with every kind of precious stone. So it's not like the Almighty Father is against having beautiful things. Just look at the world he created for us, the mountains and the rivers and the flowers. In the little season that we're in, you can't just run from your problems, unfortunately. I've tried it, and you can run from some, but not all of them. But if you ask the Father, he will help you cerebrally calculate how to lessen little season problems more and more if you ask him. And I can attest to that. Prayer and faith is of the most importance in how to idealize your current living situation in this world. Will fall into place more and more. Not riches, but a joyful life, low in stress. You have to realize the power of prayer. When you pray more, you'll notice, you'll connect the dots. The Father answers your prayer. That's not in my opinion. That's in experience after experience after experience. And those are the ones I've realized. Most of them I probably didn't even connect the dots. But when you do connect the dots, you're like, wow, amazing. Because usually, from what I've seen, when you pray, the Most High Father will make you a problem solver. He will make you an expert problem solver. You'll be able to solve problems and dilemmas like you have supernatural help doing so. Because most likely you do. And you definitely do if you prayed about it. And I've gone on and on about don't trust anyone. However, don't shut down and be cold-hearted. You want to have a loving heart and be a joyful person, and you give them a chance. Just because you don't trust them, you give them more than a chance. Because yes, in this little season, there's so much demonic oppression that you can't really trust anybody, especially with finances. Don't trust anybody with finances. But other than that, give them a chance. Give them a chance to prove you wrong, and give them a chance to show that you can trust them. Because yes, you can trust ones that you've given a chance to and that have proven themselves worthy of your trust. And the Most High Almighty Father, He can do anything. I don't think there is a rapture. I've been over that over and over. I think that's false doctrine. But if the Almighty Father in heaven wanted to, He could rapture. He obviously could. He would need some pretty powerful rapture beams in the United States, though, because that's a lot of tonnage to lift per individual. Just kidding, Father. You could obviously do it. I wanted to make a United States fat joke. And once again, I'll remind you that controlled opposition is real and dangerous. They lead you down dangerous paths that can lead you to be more susceptible to demonic oppression. They can convince you to buy dangerous things like worm medication and fish tank cleaner, touted as healthy compounds that will promote vitality when it's nothing but the opposite. And trust me, if you're hearing this for the first time and disagree, this isn't my first rodeo. Be extremely careful. Something this has taught me, which I went over in one of my previous videos, is that God wants you to take care of what He has given you. Just because this is temporary doesn't mean you don't care for things and details and just let things fall into disrepair. They might be temporary and you can't take them with you, but everything good is a gift from the Father. So let's take care of everything He gives us to the best of our abilities. Obviously, we're not perfect. Our lack of perfection is why we require Jesus. It all makes sense. And in this stage of the season, they're telling the youngsters that if you're average, you're a failure, with all this alpha male stuff and stuff like that. My older videos, that was my main niche, but I tried to put a better spin on it. I always emphasize to never lie, never be a deceiver, to be kind, not nice. Nice is phony and weak. Kind is stern and noble and joyful and trustworthy. Kind is the epitome of what a man should be, a solid rock who can protect and provide. But these modern alphas, it's all about the women and the clothes and the money and being a liar. And unfortunately, that's what the youngsters want to hear, too. It's the epitome of one of the tools of Satan's little season. One of the many tools. He's tightening bolts everywhere. And something I don't hear enough in the Millennial Kingdom little season neck of the woods is to pray. Pray, pray, pray.
Question, what did you do this morning?
3 times a day, all day. All day is a prayer. I talk to the Almighty Father all day. And during my main prayers, it's for comfort. I ask for comfort and for guidance and for knowledge, wisdom, and discernment. He's someone you can talk to if you want to discuss topics like this. If you don't have anybody to discuss topics like this with, talk to the Father. I talk to myself and the Father more than anybody else. And I'm not even embellishing. You're never lonely when you love your own company, and most of all, if you love the Father's company. But I can't emphasize enough, always with the utmost respect and humility, and be humble when talking to the Father. You are talking to the Alpha, Dawn, Dada of them all. So be extremely respectful, because your life, your salvation, and your soul are literally in His hands. And when you fear Him, there ain't much else to be afraid of. Keep that in mind, and I'm reminding myself in that regard too. Because the devil doesn't have as much authority as some will have you believe. He would have had us forced to do things by now that would have removed our salvation or killed us. He is here to deceive in this season. We basically have to make our own decision. We have to remove our own salvation. We have to kill ourselves for him to win. He can deceive us into doing so, but we're the ones that basically have to do it. We're the ones that have to go to the pokey center to get, as they would say in French, the inoculation. I used to speak French, and I don't think that's the French word for it.
I'm from Paris. Look at me. What accent was that? I don't know.
So yes, Satan is here to deceive the nations in the short season. He can deceive dictators and things of that nature to kill others, but ultimately we have to make the choice. You've heard the expression, you have to let the vampire in. And the devil, he's doing a darn good job at deceiving. Literally have to give the devil his due. But his evil minions can't touch a hair on your head without the permission of the Almighty Father himself. When you fear the Father, you have nothing else to fear. And yes, again, a reminder to myself too, because maybe I've did it in this video a few times. But for general hypotheses, if you hypothesize something, don't state it as fact. Like Satan being loose causing the mud flood. It's very possible, but don't state it like it's a 100% conclusion, confirmed, fact-checked. Well, we all know the truth about fact-check anyways, but you know what I mean.
The type of people you'd find in a polyamorous relationship, the type of people that would label everything that they don't like as fascism or bigotry.
But for example, we should have learned about being careful about coming to 100% conclusions about things with the speculation of the
COVID-19! 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 I blow the wind of God!
The people will be no more in 2 years. And it's 100% the mark. I was very convinced of a lot of that stuff, a lot of those fear tactics. And it's great that most of us kept our blood pure and we got through that unscathed. Maybe a few additional pounds, but mostly unscathed. So let's not fall into that same trap again and to have our guard up. And there has been a lot of hypotheses, a lot of people hypothesizing about the name Tartaria. And I definitely think that specific term is being used by the oppositions for a reason. And we've uncovered some pretty good evidence as to why they could. And something I specifically looked up is there are a lot of Tartars in Russia and Kazakhstan, like people descended known as Tartars still in these countries and regions. And I looked up what their faith was, assuming that this would be the case anyways, but their modern Tartars are all, I think it was a small percent was non-religious, and the rest are all Islam and Muslim, which, there you go. Take of that what you will. And people keep bringing up the pagan symbols on buildings to discredit this. However, if you think about it, it would be several 1,000 times easier to slap some statues on old buildings than to build the place itself. You know what I mean? Like, they're saying it was built in, let's say, for example, just so-and-so palace was built in 1785 in 5 years. That obviously wasn't the case. We speculate, but you know. But it would be easy to just slap some like horrible looking monsters on it. And another thought that crossed my mind is some of them almost look like warnings. Like maybe they were warning us in the Millennial Kingdom of what was to come. Because John Levi was showing recently these entrances to these old world buildings, and they were men chained up at the bottom, and they were like these controller figure statues above the oppressed people in chains. And who knows, maybe that could have been a warning to us from the people during that time. And another thing that crossed my mind is, I love when Jesus spoke about whenever it was and they'll be cast out and they'll be weeping and gnashing of teeth. I don't know how many times he said that, but he said it definitely at least a few times, the weeping and gnashing of teeth. And I don't know if maybe some of the gargoyles and demonic looking figures outside of the cathedrals and things like that. So the cathedral would represent the house of God and the safe place. And maybe the outside of the cathedral, those were representations, those statues and stuff, of the outer darkness, where there would be weeping and gnashing of teeth and bad entities such as that. I think that's a possibility too. There's definitely some symbology that we can definitely further speculate and hypothesize about in that regard. Yeah, this little season, it's something else. Here in Canada, we're prisoners.
Yeah. Have you ever thought about bailing out of Canada?
There's weird stuff around like unrealized capital gains and exit taxes, and that basically traps you there.
So they make it very difficult to leave the country.
Yeah. Everything is structured around how do I get around this system, not how do I stay here. Like, it's a beautiful place to live in British Columbia, for example, but like its cost of living is obscene.
Wow.
Yeah. It's like one of the worst offenders on the planet for cost of a home.
They're making it almost impossible to even escape. Yet they're letting like literally like almost millions of people in from.
This is done by design, since we never saw any diversity amongst the Chinese in Mulan or the Wakandans in Black Panther. They only do this to white people.
And if you ever want to see like a rip-off Millennial Kingdom, go look at, maybe I'll put some footage of it here, but look at Turkmenistan. It's like the Little Season Millennial Kingdom rip-off. But the buildings are quite impressive. They're made of marble. I would love to see somebody look into how these were constructed, because they're pretty darn impressive. And it's a very strange country, Turkmenistan. And not to mention Kazakhstan. That's like the Illuminati like capital. Some very Little Season-ish kingdom architecture there too. And yes, the U.S. acquisition of, in one form or another, of Greenland and Canada would basically complete the surrounding of the camp in the north, if that's the case, as we've speculated. Because you have Russia and Siberia, Alaska, Canada, Greenland, and then Finland and Norway, which is the EU, so that it's already complete. But if you want to put ink on paper legalities about it, Gog and Magog surrounding it, because it seems that some of this stuff, there's rules to it, and it even does require legalities and dotted I's and T's crossed. You don't hear Illuminati enough anymore. I guess that's like old school. When I've been in this game for 18 years, man. So back in the day, it was all Illuminati. Some of the first documentaries I watched, there was a guy with a really thick British accent and Bill Clinton getting makeup, and he is just a puppet seeming. Really good stuff, and it was all Illuminati.
You can be rich and famous too. I love the establishment. Yay, let's manipulate the economy. War is good for humanity.
Forgive me, Father. I'm not praising them by any means, but it gets the conspiracy nostalgia going. And something interesting was brought to my attention on the bombing of Dresden. The bombing of Dresden, known as Operation Millennium. Let me repeat that. Operation Millennium was a strategic bombing operation conducted by the British Royal Air Force, the RAF as it's known, and the United States Army Air Force, USAAF, on February 13th through 15th, 1945 during World War II. The operation aimed to disrupt German transportation and communication networks, supporting the Soviet advance on the Eastern Front. According to the official story, however, I thought that was extremely interesting. And since I was talking about stating things as fact, a good way to convince people is to state what the official facts are. Like, for example, the massive earthquake in San Francisco that basically leveled the entire city. You do exactly what... But something I want to touch on with the translator and the preservation of God's words. You always see the translator should have said this and not that. And I'm still of the stern belief that the KJV and the Geneva Bible is basically as unobscured word of God as you can possibly get. If he wanted specific words and messages preserved in his texts, they will be. There's no Mandela effect or nothing Satan can do that's more powerful than God. The Most High, Almighty Father in heaven, creator of all, can preserve the texts he wants to preserve for us, in my opinion. And some obscure speculation here, but something to ponder, like Jesus' energy during the Millennial Kingdom. And I think it could have been a more etheric, almost like spiritual energy, and even powered by him. Whereas now, in the little season, the devil uses dirty electricity, using it for profit. And I'm thinking that the electricity is more the devil's power. Hence all these Black Mirror devices. And it reminded me of how New Age health folks always say that we're electrical being. And is it possible that our bodies have even changed in the little season? Where maybe during the Millennial Kingdom we were more etherically, spiritually charged beings. And in this little season, something to ponder. Maybe the fact that we are electrical too, and that's the devil's energy. He can more easily tap into us, like demonic oppression and things of that nature. And the more soul and etheric, the more close to God you are, it's obviously harder for them. Copy of the Geneva 2. I looked it up, and it's not copyright. All the other versions of the good old Biblo, well, it's not a good old Biblo anymore once they get a hold of it. The copyright versions are owned by the same little hat people that are involved in the corn industry. And yes, both corn industries, because they're probably involved in vegetable oil too. But the smut corn industry, adult books, and entertainment. To me, the tall tale sign is the KJV is the most attacked. And I'm convinced that the Almighty Father wouldn't allow the Millennial Kingdom True Word Bible to be copyrighted. People act like back in the day the witch hunts were so bad, if they were even true. And they make it look like the church was so evil. And who knows, maybe the witch hunt was a real pagan cleansing, and they put them through proper trials where there was proof that these people were into nefarious spiritual activity. If you've ever read the Old Testament, you obviously know the Father has wiped a variety of non-believers out before. And that's the type of ammunition that some people use for their whole Yahweh was the devil thing. The Old Testament Father, the Almighty Father in heaven in the Old Testament, was the same one that Jesus spoke to in the New Testament. All those people use as cannon fodder for their argument is how evil they act like the Father was. But they don't use any proof. It's very easily debunked. Think of the Transfiguration. Who did Moses interact with? The only thing that makes me as angry as people calling Jesus the devil is them calling the Almighty Father in heaven the devil. And I still see people asking over and over again, like, once they find out about the millennial kingdom, is what now? And they're concerned that if they're forgotten or something. Faith-wise, nothing has changed. We're not forgotten. If anything, he hears us just as much as he ever has, because there's very few of us sincerely calling out to him. If the church spoke more about Revelation and people read it and understood it better, more people would figure out the little season on their own. Deceiving the nations with 911, cosmology and the shape of the earth deception, hiding biblical cosmology.
Here we see the constellation called the Big Dipper. If I project a drawing of a Big Dipper on top of it, we see where this constellation gets its name. These stars form the constellation Roger Ebert. And these two little stars over here form the constellation the Crusades.
Kudos to the ones that have figured the right things out to get to this point thus far. Pray over your food, or in general if you're concerned, because I'm a huge proponent of animal products. My diet is probably 70% beef, but look at the other side of the spectrum. Look at some vegans and fruitarians, for example.
If you've got plenty of fruit, you can thrive. If you're going to eat just animal flesh, you're not going to thrive. The only food that you can thrive on for long periods of time is fruit.
Hello, everyone.
Jeez. If the Ten Commandments and stoning were still a thing, we'd be living in a much more spiritually prosperous, truly loving, sincere, and kind place. Because in Scripture, the Father never seemed to be against government in itself, as long as the mainstay of the laws were God's laws. Most people do require management. Just look at the state of people. And I still hold true to, even in the little season, the Father will reward countries and nations that stay true to him. That's why in countries like the US and Canada, there's been a flood of other nation that is causing serious harm to our nations. We're too busy in the little season stuffing our face with food and watching TV, watching food on TV with all these decadent, ridiculous TV shows, and people going on New Age ayahuasca retreats, turning themselves into vessels for demonic oppression.
One thing I do see that freaks me out, though, is people permanently changing their brain chemistry with like heavy ayahuasca exposure or whatever.
Oh, yeah.
People have gone like retreats and then come back unrecognizable in their demeanor and how they behave, and not in a good way, like weirdos.
I know a few.
Yeah.
Let's stay humble in this little season and not become cultish or pretentious. Pride and hubris discredits the message. And I haven't mentioned this for a while. I encourage you not to just say Christ. Luciferians have no problem just saying Christ. They'll be calling their very own Maitreya the Christ. Some people don't like saying Jesus enough. Jesus strikes fear in the hearts, if they even have hearts, of devils and demons. And that's why so many spirits of light, quote unquote light, deceptive spirits, appear to people and they say, I am the one they call Christ. They have no problem saying that, but they'll never say Jesus. I'm sure they know there'll be dire consequences if they did. May the Most High, Almighty Father, be with you. May His Holy Spirit comfort you and convict you when you're doing wrong and push you in the right direction. In Jesus' mighty name, our Savior, our King, Jesus. What a wonderful name. Peace be with you.